two brothers are in the typical situation of the little one being inferior to the elder one. He didn't like him, he had to see his back wherever he tried to do something. And every time he thinks that he has equaled his brother, he just gets disappointed as his brother stands up to him and sets a new height for him to achieve. This was his life. He just wanted to reach, let alone surpass his brother, but he always fails at it. Every time and all the time when they had these situations in front of them, his brother let him get what he wanted by clearing out the path, favoring his reasons just because they were blood-related brothers. But all of this thinking was thwarted when he was faced with the challenges of the real world. The cruelty that this life had shown him made him realize that he had been a jerk all along. This life had made him realize that all the non-flattery words that he had ever heard and all the mocking that was given to him were right. He was an idiot, and he had now admitted it wholeheartedly. All of this had not happened because of his understanding of the situation, but because of the shock that he had just suffered in the form of the death of his brother. His elder brother had died, and now he had realized that he had wasted almost all of his life hating the only family that he had. Now that he thinks about it, it was not hate, but just a complex of inferiority. He did not hate his brother, but the opposite. He wanted to become like him. He wanted to be equal to him, but his constant failings made him think that it was his hate. And now, there's nothing he can do. His brother has died saving him, and there's no way he could do anything to correct his life or correct the mistakes that he had made. It was his brother who had surpassed him everywhere. Even in death, he was the first one to get it in the most heroic way possible. The flying dragon race was filling up the sky. He had the severed arm of his brother in his hand, while his own hand was lying somewhere. Because of these dragons, he's going to join his brother soon, as he had already lost an arm and a leg along with the hope of having a life any longer than this. He was clinging to life with the help of his sword, which he was using to balance himself. But there's this one thing that he has decided, and that is to get the dragons down with him. In the other world, he wanted to take the dragons with him. Now that he was ready to end it all, the dragons dashed into him, but before the impact could happen, a sudden outburst of golden light occurred, and in front of him, he saw a pale white being tied with golden chains of destiny. Structure was that of a human, but his wings, tail, and horns were those of a dragon. The other dragons took their ground and bowed before this being with the divine presence. His aura was emitting the grandeur of him being the king of the whole dragon race, rich with the sacrifice of his comrades. Almost all of the Dragon Kings had been executed, which meant that the ones he's facing should be the last of the Dragon King. His brother was the one who took down the last Dragon King. The slated Dragon King asked Rudd if he's the last dragon slayer of this place. He is. But there was an ominous feeling that he was having. His instincts were screaming that the being he's facing is much more dangerous than the formidable 7 Dragon Kings that he and his team had slayed so far. Rudd knew that he only one chance. He held his sword and pulled the strap with his mouth to balance his body. Seeing his preparations, the Dragon King understood that it would be the last blow that Rudd would inflict on him, as he had no more strength left. For the sake of honoring this fight, he took it seriously while Rudd closed the distance between them, and, with a clean but discomforting stance, swung his sword. The Dragon King's head was split in half as he was asking him to wait a little longer. It was true. The sensation that Rudd had felt was real. He knew that he had sliced the muscles and shattered the cranial bones of the Dragon King, but it was still feeling so unreal to him. White flashes of light blurred out the scene. But soon enough, Rudd came back to his senses and realized that things had changed. He was not on the mountain, but in a city in a healthy condition, having all of his limbs intact. It was like he had been sent back in time. It was explained to them that they are the Dragon Slayers. Dragon Slayers are those who slay dragons. It is their duty to slay dragons, beings that are called wise, but they didn't act like that, as they just casually destroy and crush the lives of innocent and unrelated beings that are below them. It is their duty, which doesn't require any sense of righteousness or justice, as it only asks for one thing, which is for them to slay dragons. They could do it because of their personal revenge, for the protection of the weak, or for entertainment purposes. It does not matter as long as the members of the Dragon Annihilation Academy annihilate the dragons. The speaker wanted them to understand the importance of Dragon Slayer's existence, and with that he welcomed all the freshmen to Iridium, the Dragon Annihilation Academy. The Academy's been standing firm for the last 700 years, imparting the best possible education in the field of killing dragons. It's the place where Rudd had been sent. He's going back to his past, the place from which his journey began. He remembered the scene to be similar to that of his past when the entrance ceremony of Iridium happened. Confusion, shock, and nervousness were the feelings that were rushing through his mind. He was unable to grasp the situation and thought of it all as a dream. But still, the memories that he had were there as well. He remembered the sacrifices of his teammates and the encounters that he had with the Dragon King. But then he also remembered the words of the Dragon King that he wanted to wait for a battle. It could be that he had been sent back in time. It could be a regress, but there's no way anything like that could happen, as there's no magic spell that can send someone back in time. If there's a chance of it, it would be an impossible thing for a dragon unless it's some kind of god. But if that's the case, then the one that he killed was no ordinary dragon king, but some really strong being that defies the laws of nature. Various thoughts were conflicting in his mind. If all of this is true, then there's no reason for him to think about it, as in the end, that was just a dragon that needed to be slain. It's his duty, which he had to fulfill, and if it really is a rebirth, if he had really regressed back in time, he should use this second chance as an opportunity to change the future that he had witnessed. The future was where his friends had died. In the future where his brother had died, he wanted to change it to protect all of their lives, along with the millions of other lives that were taken by these dragons. With that resolve in his mind, Rudd went ahead. While he was on the stairs, a girl stopped him and asked if he was mentally sick or something. Rudd turned back and remembered this girl as Haneth, the one who had sacrificed herself for the sake of protecting him. Haneth Harpelia. She asked how he knew about her. Rudd realized that it must be their first meeting and told her that she's the top entrant, and because of that, he knows about her. Haneth confirmed the fact, and Rudd asked her the reason for asking about his mental health. She said that she had noticed him talking to himself and cursing from the moment he had arrived here, and thus thought that he could be suffering from a mental illness or something. She had never expected someone crazy like him to be admitted into this academy, but it's also her first time meeting a crazy person. So that's why she asked. Rudd was not taking her seriously, as he knew that it's normal for her to be this rude. Seeing him smile at her mocking made her feel like he's some kind of pervert, and she said it on his face. Rudd told her that it's not what she's thinking and apologized to her for causing her trouble. Deep down, he knows that she has a lot to learn, and because of that, he can't argue with her at the moment. The entrance ceremony began with a very long speech. Haneth got tired of it and tried to talk to Rudd, but he didn't say anything. He knew that she would annoy him more if he ignored her, so he spoke to her, and the conversation began. She told him that she could bear a longer speech, as she's a lot more patient than she looks. The magicians of the Harpelia family are trained to be patient from the beginning. She asked Rudd about himself. He introduced himself as Rudd Donatos from Desol, a place located on the outskirts of the country. It was her first time hearing about this place. She wanted to tell him something but stopped in the middle, remembering her mother's words about staying away from outsiders and lower-class people. She cleverly changed the topic and asked him if he wanted to know anything. She told him about the guild leaders that were seated on the second floor, but this information was not needed as Rudd already knew about them. He even knows their future achievements and their deaths as well. He didn't tell Haneth about it and kept on listening to her wise words. She told him that they had arrived here to look for talented students whom they could recruit into their guilds. Most students are eligible to go to a guild in their third year, but for some special cases like hers, it's already decided. Rudd told her that she would go to the Midsummer Flame. Haneth got surprised but continued to act wisely and told him that it's because the guild leader is the perfect role model for her. The White Flame Empress Liana Cherneka was a top-ranking fire magician who used white flames. She died while fighting against one of the Dragon Kings, and after her death, Haneth was promoted as the Midsummer Flame Guild's next leader. He wished her luck for her future and she thanked him. The speech had ended, and now it's Haneth's turn to take her oath as the top entrant. Everything was going according to his memories, and after her, the next turn would be his brother's. The student council's president, Iazir Donatos, was going to be the next person. He was a genius in his studies, a fierce warrior on the battlefield, and the only family that he had. He was the one who had sacrificed himself in order to save the life of his brother. Haneth was done with her oath, and now it's the turn of the student council's president. The speech began, and the president introduced himself as Jeremy Duville. First, Rudd thought that he heard it wrong, but then he raised his head and saw the president to be Jeremy Duville. He was giving his speech on the academy, dragons, and dragon slayers, addressing the freshmen of their academy. Everyone was listening to him except Rudd, who was constantly thinking of his brother being in his place. His memories were conflicting with reality, as it had to be his brother. He remembered the same pitch in the voice of his brother and the fact that Jeremy was his best friend. His speech, along with the event, had ended, and Haneth was ready to get into her class, but she saw Rudd rushing towards the president. He stopped him and grabbed him by his arm. He forcefully inquired about his brother and asked if he had not stood up for being president. Jeremy got away from his grip and told him that he's getting some kind of misunderstanding as it's his first time hearing the name Iazir Donatos. Rudd was shocked. He started thinking about his brother. These thoughts soon turned into a feeling that his brother did not exist in this world. The best student of Erisium and the best warrior of his world, his blood-related brother Iazir Donatos, is not in this world. The bells had rung, and the ceremony officially ended. All the freshmen were assigned their classrooms. Rudd was still thinking about the existence of his brother. He did not want to believe in this, but still, if this thought comes out to be true, then all of the incidents that had happened in the past that had his brother involved in them, everything would change. But there's also another possibility that his brother would have regressed as well, and it's also possible that he had decided to change the course of his actions to change the past. The second idea was the one that he wanted to believe, but there were still some cross-talking thoughts that were coming in and going out of his head. Enith was curiously watching him, and she finally asked him what he was thinking with this much concentration. Rudd told her that he's looking for someone and was thinking about the possible places where he could find him. She suggested that he pay the Information Guild and get help from them. Rudd told her that he's a student at this academy. As for the academy, she suggested he look into the library's records, as they keep a list of all the students. Rudd got up and was ready to leave for the library, but Heneth got angry as she was still talking. She told him that he should not go there now, as they only had 15 minutes before their class started. She did not want to be late on her first day of school. Rudd told her that she does not need to come with him, but Heneth made up an excuse, saying that she's worried if he might cause trouble in the academy. She also asked him why he was picking up a fight with the student council president. He said that he was just asking him about this person. In their way, they had a hefty conversation. Heneth asked him if he knew where the library was. As for this question, he did not have any answers. She told him that they were going in the wrong direction. She told him to follow her, and after a few minutes, they were there. They had successfully reached the library. It was big, so very big, and had a lot of books in it. There were a lot of people as well. Heneth was charmed by the central library. She had wished to come here. Rudd asked her how she knows about this place if it's also her first day in this academy. With a condescending face, she told him that it's normal for students to memorize the facilities of the academy. Although he had never come to the library in his past life, he still agreed with her. He went to check the students' list while Heneth was reading the books. They had some of the most rare and invaluable books there, which totally surprised her. Rudd found the students' list and started looking for his brother's name in it. Now his suspicion for the first possibility was getting stronger, and the reason for it also came forward in the form of the Void Dragon Sartan, a Dragon King who controls dimensions and voids. During their last battle with the Dragon Kings, when they were on the brink of death, his brother took the Dragon King, and they both disappeared with it. So now there's this possibility that his brother hasn't died yet, and is still alive somewhere in some other dimension because of Sartan. Now that Rudd was done with his thing, he called Heneth, but she was having an argument with the receptionist as she was taking 17 books with her, but the limit was 3 books at a time. The lady asked them if they were the new students of this academy and the reason for their being here, as their classes are going to get started soon. Rudd took his leave, while Heneth followed him while rushing with only 3 books. They successfully reached the classroom on time and prevented themselves from getting late on their first day of class. In the class, she asked him if he had found the person he'd been looking for. The answer was not positive. Rudd told him that his name was not on the list. On that, Heneth asked him about his relationship with the person he's been looking for. He told her that it was his older brother. The class was started, and the teacher introduced himself as Daniel Gold, their basic combat teacher for the first year. A single subject for most of them, but for those who were going to take weapon skills and martial arts classes, then they would have longer interactions with him. But in any case, they would have 4 years in total, which he wished them to fulfill by doing the best thing that would benefit them. The students knew about Daniel being a super high ranker, and most of them hadn't expected to have him as a teacher. He explained to them about the guild system and the education that he would be providing. He told him that he just wanted his students to show a lot of hard work with just a little talent. But Rudd knows what he meant by a little talent. It took him a lot of desperation, shame, and experience just to get that little talent. He went to the dormitory because he knows that a major part of slaying dragons requires stamina, and for that reason, he went to the training room that he had mostly used in his previous life. He wanted to check if he still possessed the same stamina that he had in his previous life. He did 30 pull-ups and realized that his stamina was just equal to his current physique. He did not want things to end up the same way as they did in his previous life, and therefore, he wanted to increase his strength and endurance. He knew that he could work hard, and believing in that fact, he went to work. There, he saw a familiar face. It was his second ally that worked with him, along with Heneth. This person was known as Balixteros. Balixteros, who in the future will achieve the title of the First King, was here. This was an unplanned encounter, as he had to meet him after the midterm exams at the priest training room. He didn't mind him and continued his workout, but then noticed something strange. Throughout the session, Balak was staring at him. Rudd got annoyed by it and finally asked him. Balak apologized to him for misunderstanding his actions and told him that his postures and movements were so perfect that he wanted to copy them. He didn't even see his father showing him such perfection, and that had made him attracted to him. They both had an introduction, and Balak took Rudd as his master. Rudd didn't like that, but there was no option of rejection for him. The scene shifted to the outdoor training ground, where they were asked to choose a weapon for themselves. Rudd praised the academy for having such high training standards. Hinith asked the teacher if she needed to choose a weapon, as she's going to become a wizard. Daniel told her that she should be able to protect herself even if she becomes a wizard. She got the point and started looking for a good weapon. Rudd suggested she use a short dagger as she would be able to control its attack radius using mana. It was his experience from the previous life that Hinith had a talent for daggers. She used them a lot and saved many people with them. She chose the dagger and asked Rudd what he was going to choose. He swung a sword but was still not sure about it. Daniel saw the swing and understood that Rudd possesses the talent for swordsmanship. Rudd went to the teacher and asked him if he could take multiple weapons. There was no rule for it, so he was allowed to take a secondary weapon, but Rudd insisted on taking the extras as his primary weapon as well. He took the spear and the big sword, along with his normal sword, as his primary weapons. First, the teacher thought of him as arrogant, but then considered him something other than a genius. He asked Rudd what he used to do before coming to the academy. He answered, saying that he worked as a mercenary after losing his family in a dragon attack. They apologized to him for asking a sensitive question and praised him for his skills with the weapons. When they were walking away, they saw a ruckus in the other class. The teacher was having an argument with Balak, who was refusing to use a weapon as it was against his family beliefs. The teacher was insisting on him using a weapon, but he was saying that the physical combatants of the Steros family don't use weapons. Daniel held back the teacher while Balak came to Rudd. Hinith asked him if he's a friend of his, but Rudd said no. The teacher yelled at him for going to his friend while she was still talking. Balak said that they had a deeper relationship than that of friends. Daniel told him that they are in the middle of a class, and if he refuses to pick a weapon anymore, he will have to repeat 1 year of his studies. Rudd thought that he would get away with this like in his previous life, but that was not the case here. The past had changed in an odd way. Now that he's here, it might have changed the course of his actions, and if that happens, then he would get in big trouble. Balak was about to reject the teacher's advice, but Rudd stopped him and asked the teachers if they could make an exception for him. They didn't, and now Rudd had no choice. He looked near him and found a pair of wrist protectors. He gave it to Balak and told him to use it as defensive equipment, but he refused that as well. Rudd told him that he should just think of it as a gift from a friend and take it. While Balak accepted them, the teacher stood against them, saying that it's not a weapon that he's holding. Rudd told the teachers that it's like gauntlets with some modern design that provides protection to the wrists. Considering them as a defensive weapon, the teachers agreed on letting Balak use the uniquely designed gauntlets. Now that he had managed the situation, he was relieved but also worried as his actions would have a tremendous effect on the future. The trio had completed their classes, and Rudd was finding them very easy. As in the first week of academy, the teachers mostly scout the students and give them time to adjust. Rudd knew that he had already done enough to get into their eyes, and now he just needs to prepare himself for the sparring classes. Behind him, Hinith was accusing Balak of being a fool, and he was telling her that he wasn't a fool. While they were in the hallways, 3 students came to them and started badmouthing the boys. Hinith tried to shake them, but instead they tried to make her join them. She cursed the leader, whose name was Wilhelm Parde. He got furious but controlled himself, as Hinith was a top student and he didn't want to mess with her. But Hinith kept on mocking him. Rudd came forward and asked him what he wanted. Wilhelm told him that both of them had created scenes to catch the professor's attention, and he didn't like that. He wanted them to stop. Rudd really did that to stand out, but he remembered that in his previous life when he didn't stand out, he was bullied as well. So in the end, it doesn't matter, as bad people will always do bad things. At that time, he used to beat those kids, but now he wanted to handle things more maturely. He used his words instead of his hands and mocked him. Wilhelm furiously charged into him to land a punch, but fell as Rudd had evaded the attack. He got up and took out his sword. Hinith told him that it's prohibited to use a weapon outside of the training grounds. But he didn't listen and attacked Rudd. Rudd dodged all of his attacks and, in the end, used a special technique that Balak had taught him in the future. With the Steros-style bare-handed parrying, he unarmed Wilhelm and shocked everyone. The teacher came and sent Wilhelm to clinic. She was also shocked to see a freshman protecting himself bare-handed against an armed student. Hinith told her that it's Wilhelm's fault and he's the one who took out his weapon. The teacher called Rudd to her office after the class. Hinith asked about the technique that he used, and so did Balak. Balak told her that it's a technique that his family uses and asked if Rudd is his long-lost cousin or a secret younger brother. Rudd declined all of his words and told them that he's a genius. Hinith asked him if he'd been hiding something. Balak shifted the conversation by saying that everyone has their secrets, and it's okay to not tell your friends about them. Ina stood against the friends part, but it reminded Rudd of the time in the future when they used to have fights like these. But here, everyone is still alive. And he had decided not to let the future unfold in the same way as it did in the past. He had decided to save everyone. With his futuristic acting skills, Rudd got away from the teacher, telling her that he got carried away while his opponent insulted his friend. He apologized for causing a commotion and said that he'd act more maturely. She was happy with his behavior. Later, Daniel came to her office and reminded her that the freshman discussion meeting was going to be held at her office, as she had insisted on it. The homeroom teachers of classes A, B, C, and D arrived, and the meeting began. These teachers had high hopes for the new students, as they seemed to be on a higher level than the previous year's students. They asked for any special students that they had in mind. No one came out of classes C and D, but from Class B, Balak and Wilhelm were forwarded as idiots and lunatics. Daniel was impressed with Balak and wanted to focus on him. He himself presented Henneth and Rudd as the special students in his class. Everyone knew Henneth and the fact that she would get chosen by the White Flame Empress, but for Rudd, no one knows anything. Daniel said that he thinks Rudd will come out as the strongest student of this year, even though it was not on his entrance exam results. Claire, the teacher of Class B, told him that he's a well-mannered student that she likes a lot. Everyone was shocked, as she never compliments anyone. Claire said that it would be better for her to take him in, as he's a talented, unarmed combatant, but because of his skills with weapons, Daniel wants him in his class. An argument occurred between them, which irritated Class C's teacher. He broke the table and told them that it's up to the students to choose their homeroom teachers. While he was picking up Rudd's datasheet, he noticed that he's from Desol, the village that disappeared after the Thousand Form incident. At that time, a single dragon destroyed almost half of the southern region of the country. The shape-shifting dragon, Keanu, was the one. Daniel was there when that incident occurred, but it was his master who took down the dragon himself. The land was all turned into ashes, and there was nothing left. So no one had expected any survivors from it. It must be his reason to fight, to get revenge on the dragons for his family. The teacher of Class D remembered that there's also a student like Rudd in his class who can turn out to be the strongest from this batch. He was a genius student with monstrous talent. During a rigorous training session, Rudd engaged in exercises, aware of the upcoming sparring lecture in 3 days. Adapting to the breathing techniques and stances from his previous life, he noted an increased skill level. Meanwhile, Hanneth's arrival prompted a discussion on the rationale for their extensive 3-hour workout regimen without intervals. Balak responded to her surprise by suggesting her participation and commented on the insufficient physical conditioning observed among the Academy's female members. Later, Hanneth and Rudd visited a cafe to procure drinks. Here, Rudd encountered Leone, a figure from his past who had belittled him, comparing him unfavorably to his brother while acknowledging his potential. As a formidable swordsman known as the Sword Saint and a renowned dragon slayer, she matched his brother in strength. This memory fueled Rudd's resentment, leading him to insist that she move aside. Leon's anger intensified, resulting in an assault on Rudd, who deflected her attack with ease. Her subsequent attempt to kick him was also thwarted, leaving her bewildered by his combat skills. She then questioned the reason for their altercation. Rudd explained her initial obstruction, and after surpassing her, he left a lasting impact, with Leon resolving to remember him. Reflecting on the encounter, Rudd considered the potential harm to his wrist, realizing he had underestimated her strength. Recognizing Leon's exceptional physical abilities, he acknowledged the danger he had narrowly escaped. Hanneth, concerned for his safety, accompanied him to the infirmary, where his injuries were promptly treated. Following the event, Claire quickly approached Rudd to inquire about the conflict, which Rudd dismissed as a minor incident. Contradicting his portrayal, Hanneth revealed that Rudd had been dominated by a girl named Leon. Rudd interjected, asserting the encounter was a minor skirmish rather than a defeat. Both were surprised to learn about Leon, prompting Claire to contemplate revenge. Daniel, however, advised restraint to avoid provoking Arthur, the supervisor of Class D, recommending a tactical approach due to Leon's reputation for defeating numerous students. They planned to file a grievance with Leon's guardian, the leader of the Dragon Annihilation troops, in anticipation that Arthur would then admonish her. 3 days later, students from Classes A and B convened at the training ground for the joint sparring session, where each participant was allocated a number and chose their opponent for the match. To maintain equity, each student could only be selected as an opponent once, allowing for 2 matches per participant. Faculty members monitored the event from the second level, assessing the students' performances. The initial call summoned Helion McDowell to choose his adversary, leading him to confront Hanneth. Rudd had underestimated her, perceiving her primarily as a wizard with limited melee capabilities, yet she strategically selected a soldier, driven by her self-confidence. Hanneth initiated the combat with fireball spells, but Helion dodged them due to their slow speed. As he tried to diminish the gap before her next incantation, her enhanced quickness hindered his approach. Helion found it challenging to evade her continuous offensive, eventually being overpowered by Haneth, who triumphed by positioning her dagger at his neck, signaling his defeat. Haneth's victory led her to seek recognition from Miss Lyanna. From the sidelines, Rudd analyzed Haneth's combat style as bold and potentially risky. Noting that a more observant opponent might have capitalized on it, he recognized her unique approach to combat, sharp tactical sense, and remarkable agility, all underpinned by her strategic use of magic. Instructor Arthur also commended her skill, remarking on the unusual effectiveness of a wizard in direct combat. Following this, Claire initiated the selection process for the next participant. Wilhelm advanced, issuing a challenge to Rudd and expressing his resolve to amend past mistakes. Despite the discomfort caused by his assertiveness, Rudd agreed, affirming his readiness to fulfill Wilhelm's request. The contest concluded quickly, with Rudd dominating Wilhelm to the extent of rendering him unconscious, thus necessitating medical aid. Scene for another bout. Rudd named Balak Steros as his prospective adversary. Balak initially refused, explaining that the Steros clan abstains from fighting allies. Rudd provocatively questioned Balak's bravery, recalling his immense strength in a previous life, capable of causing tremors with his steps and toppling mountains with his strikes. Rejecting the notion of fear, Balak declared that Steros warriors do not shy away from combat and accepted the challenge. Rudd reflected on a past incident where, under Ezir's order, Balak had confronted him following a contentious issue, using provocative terms against his brother. Rudd had cautioned Balak of fatal outcomes if he interfered in their matters, leading to a sparring session where Rudd was significantly defeated. In the current confrontation, Rudd was determined to change the previous outcome. When Balak launched an attack, Rudd not only dodged but also counterattacked, targeting Balak's neck. Despite landing effective strikes, Rudd felt dissatisfied with his physical state, observing that his attack scarcely affected Balak. The Steros family, esteemed martial artists from the northern area, are famed for their extreme muscle conditioning. Their muscles, honed over generations and enhanced with mana, have transformed into a defense more robust than iron. Balak, embodying this heritage, has become nearly invincible, with a physique resistant to standard attacks. During their duel, Rudd realized the ineffectiveness of his usual tactics and drew his sword, a move Balak failed to anticipate, resulting in his downfall. This turn of events surprised the onlooking faculty, leading them to wonder if the encounter was simply a student duel, given the participants' skills comparable to legendary dragon slayers, even without employing mana. Claire, observing the fight, admired Rudd's superior movement, posture, and accuracy, recognizing that he had not unleashed his full combat potential. Daniel, who revered the ideal of a perfect sword swing, observed that Rudd's swordsmanship mirrored Bryce's heavenly sword style, a connection he found perplexing, given Rudd's supposed lack of history with his mentor. While Daniel acknowledged exceptional talent in others, he considered Rudd's innate abilities to be extraordinary, identifying him not just as a prodigy, but as a formidable force, with skills honed to perfection from an early age. After the lecture, the group headed to the student cafeteria annex. Haneth expressed a preference for dining outside, critiquing the nutritional value of the cafeteria's offerings, whereas Balak defended the internal food sources. Rudd, fatigued, opted for the cafeteria's convenience, questioning the logic of spending on external meals when adequate options were freely available. Reflecting on the economic differences, Rudd considered his own financial struggles against the wealth of Haneth and Balak, resisting Haneth's offer to pay for an external meal. He firmly declined, valuing independence and rejecting dependency. In the cafeteria, Rudd and his group were approached by individuals from the Pursuer and Clouded Moon guilds. Roderick Riddler of the Pursuer Guild acknowledged Rudd's impressive combat skills. Rudd introduced himself, while internally recalling his lack of previous interactions with Roderick and Abel, mentioning their defeat in a battle against the 7 dragons during his initial dragon-slaying endeavors. Roderick introduced Abel, highlighting his reticent demeanor. Seizing the opportunity, Haneth and Balak stood to present themselves. Inquiring about their presence in the student cafeteria, Haneth received an explanation from Roderick that they, as alumni, often visited the academy for meals. On asking about Miss Lyanna, Haneth learned she had already left. Following the sparring session, which ended to Haneth's dismay, Rudd disclosed that Abel had commended his prowess, suggesting his integration into their guild. Abel, intrigued by Rudd's repute, learned that Rudd was the 4th-ranking dragon slayer and the guild master of Clouded Moon, the 2nd-ranking guild. Abel clarified that their esteemed position stemmed from prioritizing intelligence gathering over sheer strength, unlike the leading guild. Rudd, acknowledging Abel's confidence, respectfully declined the guild invitation, expressing a preference for independence rather than formal association with the guild. While recognizing the benefits of the offer, Rudd maintained his commitment to autonomy. He proposed a reciprocal arrangement to able aid in finding his elder brother, a Sire survivor of a past calamity, in exchange for establishing a mutually beneficial relationship. Abel, seeing the value in partnering with Rudd, whose future held promise, agreed to the terms. During the conversation, Haneth mentioned the letter Rudd had received, assessing his performance in the initial sparring session. Distracted by the guild proposition, Rudd had overlooked the letter but intended to review it, especially since Haneth posited that it likely contained praise that would bring honor to his lineage. Rudd pondered Haneth's marked curiosity, suspecting it related to his previous disclosure about his brother. He reflected on Aesir, his elder sibling, noted for his exceptional benevolence and strength, often leaving others feeling inadequate in comparison. Despite Rudd's own stature as a distinguished dragon slayer, he felt eclipsed by his brother's prowess. Black, perceiving Rudd's introspective state, offered reassurance and pledged support in finding Aesir. During this exchange, Haneth prompted the review of their assessment letters. She unveiled her letter first, which recognized her potential to thrive as a battle wizard. Next, Balak presented his evaluation, emphasizing his optimal physique, superior strength, swift reflexes, and the professor's commendation of his notable musculature. When it came time for Rudd to examine his letter, Haneth enthusiastically proposed to read it aloud. To their astonishment, the letter bore a symbol, indicating the professor's invitation for Rudd to participate in a selective process. Rudd then proceeded to the staff room, met by the expectant faculty. Arthur invited Rudd to be seated, inquiring about his well-being at the academy. Claire extended hospitality with coffee and snacks, while Daniel suggested a jacket to mitigate the cold. Rudd inquired if the meeting's purpose was to determine his advisor. Arthur elucidated the meaning behind the emblem in Rudd's letter, detailing that following the sparring class, first-year students are matched with a professor whose traits resonate with theirs. Sometimes a professor might directly reach out to a student, as indicated by the symbol in Rudd's letter. Claire emphasized the significance of the student's choice in this selection process, allowing Rudd to select his advisor from among them. Rudd recognized the faculty's expertise, but shared a unique bond with Daniel, who had mentored him in swordsmanship in a past incarnation. Opting for Daniel once more, Rudd articulated his desire to further refine his swordsmanship skills under Daniel's tutelage, which delighted Daniel. Rudd proposed a condition, seeking to become Daniel's direct apprentice, a request that surprised the assembly. Daniel requested an explanation from Rudd about his understanding of the direct discipleship's significance. Rudd explained that the sky-piercing technique, a revered swordsmanship and mana manipulation skill crafted for vanquishing aerial dragons, was traditionally passed down to a sole heir in each generation. Previously, Daniel, as a pupil of a legendary swordsman, had instructed Rudd's elder brother, marking the lineage. Daniel contemplated how Rudd was informed of the open position in the succession and surmised Rudd's intent to be the forthcoming heir, albeit he had expected such a proposal to emerge later. Intrigued, Daniel inquired about Rudd's rationale behind his pursuit of the direct discipleship. Rudd articulated his pursuit of strength, referencing his former vulnerability and the demise of his kin to dragons as the driving force behind his ambition. Determined to avert any future calamities befalling his close ones, Rudd's resolve resonated with Daniel, who had experienced similar losses to dragons. Identifying with Rudd's anguish, Daniel agreed to mentor him as his direct disciple. When Daniel suggested a group mentorship involving all professors, Rudd experienced initial apprehension, concerned about the formidable challenge of learning from multiple mentors and the fairness to other students. Nonetheless, Arthur refuted these worries, emphasizing the importance of cultivating a powerful dragon slayer, like Rudd, with the potential to exterminate all dragons. Rudd was surprised by the faculty's unanimous and quick agreement on such a significant proposal. Arthur reassured that the plan would not disadvantage other students, given Rudd's unparalleled talent. Claire concurred, endorsing the unanimous decision to expedite Rudd's specialized training program. Daniel explained that the collective mentorship was an option, affirming that Rudd's preference would be respected. He pondered the responsibility tied to Rudd becoming the successor of the sky-piercing technique and its implications for other students' educational prospects. After deliberation, Rudd agreed to the proposed mentorship, requesting comprehensive guidance from the faculty. He recognized the need to transcend his existing limitations to secure a safer future for all. Following recent events, Haneth encountered Leon, who informed her that her self-controlled training was to begin forthwith. Leon directed Haneth to ready herself and, seizing a moment of inattention, struck her in the abdomen, inflicting considerable pain. This act was Leon's retribution for Haneth's earlier skirmish with Rudd, resulting in her assignment to janitorial duties within the academy. Rudd, witnessing Haneth in tears on the staircase, reflected on her once stern and aloof demeanor. He contemplated whether her change in emotion was due to the Dragon Annihilation Troop leader's demise in his previous life. Before the leader's death, Leon's existence was characterized by normalcy and fraught relationships. Now, Rudd's actions had provoked her tears. Watching her from the entrance, he mustered the courage to approach and inquire about her sorrow. Leon articulated her grievances, blaming them on Rudd. Extending a tissue, Rudd conveyed his regret for his past discourtesy. Leon, surprised by Rudd's apologetic manner, accepted his apology yet warned him to avoid further irritations. Rudd pledged to reduce disruptions, showing confidence in her capacity to strengthen independently, echoing her previous self-reliance. Afterward, Leon withdrew to her quarters, pondering the initiation of a novel course of action without necessarily pursuing friendship. Rudd unintentionally overheard Leon's discussion, leading to a misapprehension that he was trailing her, which he rectified by stating his intention to visit Professor Drill Paula. Realizing Leon was heading in the same direction left Rudd perplexed, leading him to speculate that they might have the same advisor, Professor Daniel. Upon their simultaneous arrival, Daniel inquired if they were classmates, revealing his recommendation for their mentorship, which puzzled Rudd, considering Claire was Leon's mentor in his past life. When Claire joined them, Rudd, recognizing Leon's swordsmanship expertise, proposed that she could enhance her skills with grappling techniques under Claire's tutelage. Daniel agreed, emphasizing the complementary nature of grappling and sword skills. Leon, however, declined, asserting her confidence in her chosen training path and her desire to maintain independence at the academy. Rudd, apprehensive about their potential joint training, attempted to persuade her to contemplate training with Professor Claire. Leon voiced her aversion to Professor Claire, accusing her of severe treatment towards her students. Rudd reflected on the shift in dynamics from his past life, where Leon and Claire had a positive connection, to their present strained relations, attributing the transformation to Daniel's influence and recognizing his unintended contribution to these developments. Daniel commenced the session with an introductory talk on the advanced intricacies of swordsmanship, emphasizing the demanding nature of mastering this art, which may involve significant physical trials. He recognized the high proficiency of both Rudd and Leon, but he highlighted the extensive range of possibilities in executing sophisticated sword techniques. Daniel introduced the concept of self-control sparring sessions as the ideal approach for gaining hands-on experience, introducing Rudd and Leon to the concept of intensive training through controlled combat exercises. At the end of the rigorous lecture, both Rudd and Leon appeared drained, while Daniel seemed content, announcing plans for ongoing combined and individual training sessions in the future, and wished them an enjoyable weekend. Feeling drained and vulnerable, Rudd considered leaving. Leon shared insights on retaining calm in defeat, attributing their failures to present constraints and underscoring the necessity to learn from their frailties. She portrayed Professor Daniel as accessible and empathetic. Rudd pondered her advice, then aimed to depart, yet Leon suggested that if Rudd harbored regret, he should teach her grappling techniques. Rudd, albeit reluctantly, agreed to Leon's proposal, which led her to insist on his adherence to the promise. The unfolding events in this existence were markedly different from his prior ones, complicating his ability to refuse her proposal. Rudd viewed this as an opportunity to amend previous conflicts, despite his residual resentment towards her. He internally vowed to instruct her in grappling in a way that would make her rue her request. The Dragon Annihilation Academy, known as Iridium, is tactically located in the Alphia Empire's capital at the continent's core. The imperial family, acknowledging its crucial role, substantially supports the institution. As a result, Iridium's graduates are frequently enlisted by the Imperial Guild Scouts, signifying the Academy's eminence and the prospects it provides to its students. Despite the Academy's advanced facilities, the daily academic regimen is often repetitive, restricting students to a confined space. However, they are allowed to explore the capital during weekends and holidays. Hanith suggested an excursion to Rudd and Balak, who appeared worn out. Rudd longed for relaxation, and Balak needed to mend his forearms. Yet, enticed by Hanith's assurance of a lavish meal, they yielded to her insistent proposal. Following a day's outing, Hanith escorted them to an upscale restaurant, where she was warmly recognized. Rudd, unfamiliar with such opulence from his previous and current existences, was surprised. Hanith chose a fixed menu with carbonated water for the trio. While Balak was eager for a sumptuous meal, Rudd was astounded by the steep prices, observing that the cost of a single meal equaled his monthly food expenditure. He proposed departing due to the expenses, yet Hanith prevailed, claiming their aid in her endeavors justify the lavish meal and encouraged them to select anything from the menu. During the dinner, Balak praised the food as exceptional and contemplated ordering more. Hanith, growing impatient, cast a knife towards him, gesturing for silence. She then sought Rudd's view on the meal. Rudd silently acknowledged his unsophisticated palate's inability to discern the specialty of the gourmet cuisine. Recalling their recent discussion about his brother, he saw Hanith's generosity as excessive, given their historically competitive rather than friendly relationship. Rudd felt uneasy about her changed behavior. As Balak attempted once more to order extra dishes, Hannah's irritation reached its zenith. She grasped his hand firmly, issuing a stern warning against further attempts to access the menu. Balak withdrew his hand swiftly, and amid the growing tension, Rudd voiced his appreciation for the feast, unintentionally causing discomfort to Balak with his remarks. As the clock approached 8, Rudd realized his scheduled teaching session with Leon was imminent. Leon, who had arrived early for their 8 o'clock meeting, was perplexed by Rudd's delay, wondering if he had forgotten their arrangement. Upon his arrival, Rudd noticed Leon's premature presence and inquired about it. She highlighted his lateness, stressing the need for earlier preparation for their session. Leon questioned whether Rudd had eaten before their encounter, and he informed her of his meal with colleagues in the capital. While their discussion transitioned to grappling techniques, Leon's interest in his social interactions remained. Rudd agreed to share about his acquaintances, proposing to start with basic footwork drills. After the training, recognizing Leon's intrigue with the capital, Rudd proposed a visit together the upcoming Saturday, an offer she accepted with eagerness, keen to explore the city. As Leon bombarded him with questions about his recent adventures and social engagements, Rudd eventually called for a halt, signaling the day's discussions were concluded. Taken aback by her talkativeness, Rudd reminisced about her more reserved nature in his previous experiences. Commencing the grappling session, Rudd explained he would teach her the Steros style, concentrating on precise technical maneuvers and combat tactics. He observed that Professor Claire's grappling method amalgamated techniques from various regions, creating a complex and unpredictable style. He suggested that the most effective tactic against her would involve dodging as many assaults as feasible while ensuring one's own attacks were successful. Addressing Leon's apprehension about evading strikes from Professor Claire, Rudd clarified that his teaching would focus on enhancing her evasion skills. He demonstrated a footwork technique that utilized the tips of the toes to execute elusive maneuvers, complicating opponents' ability to anticipate movements. Rudd revealed that he had developed this technique, earning Leon's respect, who commended him for his inventiveness. As Leon tried to mimic his footwork, Rudd contemplated the significant 4-year span he spent developing, refining, and perfecting this method, reflecting his dedication and effort. Rudd modestly declined to identify himself as a genius, arguing that true geniuses can grasp complex skills in a fraction of the time it took him, highlighting his methodical and extended commitment. This perspective was influenced by his interactions in a former life with individuals recognized for their exceptional talents. As Leon practiced the footwork, she stumbled and fell. Rudd provided feedback on her technique, emphasizing the importance of using her toe tips for movement. He motivated her to get up and continue practicing. Despite occasional frustration, Rudd remained dedicated to assisting her improvement. He recognized the progress they had achieved together, noting that while the situations resembled his past, the changing dynamics with his new peers held the possibility of altering future narratives. With the future of these emerging relationships uncertain, Rudd was determined to change his previous destiny and build a strong alliance to defeat the 7th dragon. Rudd, aiming to master the sky-piercing technique, initially mimicked his elder brother's approach. In a later class, he participated in a sparring session with Daniel, surprised by Daniel's playful yet competitive style. Daniel demonstrated his adaptability by setting aside his sword and initiating a series of punches, forcing Rudd to quickly evade. Rudd, perplexed, questioned the role of swords in their duel. Daniel, with a hint of amusement, underscored his unpredictable nature. Rudd realized the daunting task of facing Daniel head-on and decided to increase their distance to devise a better strategy. Engaging in the duel's dynamics, Daniel urged Rudd to demonstrate his fighting skills. Rudd advanced, wielding his sword, and thrust it towards Daniel, encapsulating the sky-piercing technique's principle, which posits the sword as both a defensive barrier and an offensive tool against enemy strikes. In his past life, Rudd had only mastered a basic form of the sky-piercing technique, aspiring to reach his brother's level of skill. However, the true essence of the technique extended beyond swordsmanship, involving deep integration with mana. After effectively deflecting Rudd's attacks, Daniel commended his proficient application of guardian and counter maneuvers, but emphasized the need to tap into substantial mana reserves from a realm known as the Heavenly Spirit, a notion Rudd recalled upon seeing a unique mark on his brother's hand. In the midst of training, Daniel orchestrated the flow of mana through Rudd's arm, triggering an intense sensation reminiscent of being consumed by fire. Rudd became intensely conscious of the pure mana coursing within him, realizing that the core of the sky-piercing legacy encompassed not merely physical actions, but also the transfer and manipulation of mana and knowledge. As Daniel readied to impart the symbolic insignia of their heritage, Rudd, acknowledging his legacy and the journey ahead, chose to have the mark inscribed on his hand, marking his acceptance and perpetuation of the sky-piercing tradition. As the emblem was ingrained onto Rudd's soul, He quickly started to draw mana from the heavenly spirit. He reflected on the alchemy arts, which denoted mana stages with heart circles, in contrast to the sky-piercing technique, which denoted prowess through the number of ethereal wings. Master Daniel exhibited 6 wings, whereas the Sky Sword Immortal, akin to Rudd's brother, exhibited 7. Rudd currently displayed a single wing, but its presence on his soul was permanent. Rudd contemplated the possible remnants of his brother's presence within the heavenly spirit, given the exclusive access limited to Master Daniel and the Sky Sword Immortal. He mulled over the lasting imprint or essence his brother might have in that domain. In another demonstration, Rudd advanced, executing an offensive maneuver with his sword, using it as both a protective barrier and an aggressive force against Daniel, epitomizing the dual purpose of the sky-piercing technique for defense and attack. Upon meeting with Haneth and Balak, Haneth remarked on Rudd's delay, stressing the significance of time management in their instructional agenda. Rudd, confused, questioned why the session had started without him, especially given Balak's known tendency to lose focus during theoretical discussions. Haneth was the sole person to ask about Rudd's time with instructor Arthur, where Rudd internally noted the ordinary nature of the session, except for Arthur's extensive praises, acknowledging his distinct abilities. Similarly, Claire commended Rudd for his advanced footwork techniques. During his visit to Professor Damien's office, Rudd experienced an hour of quietude, sitting in silence with the professor. Reflecting on the lack of prior connection with Damien from his past life, Rudd attributed this to the communication barrier and his reluctance to start a conversation. Rudd later shared with Haneth and Balak that his encounter with Professor Damien was mostly silent, interspersed with moments of tea consumption, and he disclosed the disconcerting detail that Damien had been the first among the faculty to die in his previous existence. After a lengthy period of quiet, their meeting ended without any significant developments. Shifting the discussion to Balak's experiences, he praised Professor Claire for her formidable strength, admirable respectability, and mutual valuation of muscular aesthetics. In contrast, Haneth encountered difficulties in her academic pursuits due to the lack of a specialized magician professor to mentor her. Damien had criticized her concentrated focus on flame-type magic as inefficient, recommending a broader spectrum in her magical studies. Balak argued that the rarity of flame magicians did not negate Damien's critique, causing Haneth to become agitated. Rudd sought to alleviate the discord, advising Haneth to stay calm and consider adopting a different approach. Haneth's irritation escalated due to the absence of specialized flame magic instruction at Iridium. Rudd endeavored to mollify her by proposing the potential for lecture reassignment. Despite her frustration, the deficiency of specific flame-oriented education in Iridium left her dismayed. Rudd then insinuated that the White Flame Empress might volunteer as Haneth's instructor, sparking her interest. Jeremy, harboring feelings of resentment, acknowledges the animosity directed towards him, yet remains intrigued by his adversary. Conversely, Rudd dismisses any interest in Jeremy, asserting his indifference. Haneth extends an apology for Rudd's brusque demeanor and queries why Rudd displayed such hostility towards Jeremy, especially given Jeremy's role as the student council president. Rudd retorts, suggesting that engaging with Jeremy could lead to undesirable outcomes, while Balak senses potential peril. Subsequently, Rudd discovers a cautionary message from Jeremy in his book, alerting him about Professor Damien Grace. This revelation incites anger in Rudd, who then questions Jeremy's intentions, suspecting him to be a greater threat than Damien. Reflecting on his past life, Rudd recalls his reckless actions, his morally questionable decisions, and the numerous sacrifices he made, with Damien Grace being the first casualty among the faculty, and notably, Jeremy's initial victim. Jeremy was not the direct cause of Professor Damien's death, who perished by his own hand, impaling his neck with a knife. Nonetheless, Jeremy was instrumental in persuading him to commit the act, believing Damien posed a threat to the Empire and foreseeing his demise as pivotal for future events. Presently, there is urgency to prevent a recurrence of these events, with time ticking until the critical day. Jeremy might already be influencing Damien, increasing the pressure. On Saturday, Rudd and Leon plan to explore the capital. Leon reprimands Rudd for his punctuality, advocating the importance of arriving 10 minutes early as a sign of respect. Rudd, however, contends that dedicating his valuable weekend to her company is a significant gesture of courtesy, especially given her forlorn appearance, reminiscent of a rain-soaked dog. Upon reaching the bustling capital, Leon, experiencing it for the first time, is thrilled by the throng of people. She inquires about their itinerary, which Rudd hasn't planned, leading her to remind him that as the inviter, he should assume the role of her guide. Rudd suggests that they commence their shopping excursion, a common recreational activity among his acquaintances, leading them to a boutique where Leon expresses interest in a white dress. A sales associate approaches, offering the dress for trial, Leon, seeking Rudd's opinion, is met with his indifferent response, prompting her to proceed with the purchase. She then insists on selecting an outfit for Rudd as a reciprocal gesture for his companionship. Despite his reluctance, she persuades him to try on a dress, which earns him commendation from the sales associate. Leon, visibly affected, urges Rudd to expedite the payment process, desiring him to acquire the dress. Her dissatisfaction with his manner of speech leads her to regret her decision to buy him something. Subsequently, they dine at a local eatery, which Leon finds agreeable. She inquires why Rudd settled the bill, especially when she intended to do so. Rudd explains that since she purchased clothing for him, he felt obliged to pay for their meal, reflecting his principles. Leon, puzzled by his actions, labels him an enigmatic figure. While strolling, Leon inquires whether Rudd has any allies or comrades from his tenure as a mercenary. Rudd reflects that his companionship was tied to his former life as a dragon slayer, not as a mercenary. When Leon probes further about the nature of his relationships with his comrades, questioning whether they shared a familial bond, or if he harbored affection for anyone among them, Rudd reacts vehemently, denying any familial resemblance and asserting that his comrades regarded him as naive, always poised for betrayal. Leon, taken aback by his outburst, recognizes the complexity of his character, noting his unrefined temperament alongside his sincerity and willingness to instruct her in combat techniques. Continuing their journey, they arrive at the city's siren in the Liberal Kingdom. Rudd cautions against the visit, citing academy regulations, but Leon reassures him, pointing out their non-uniform attire reduces the risk of detection. As they consider using the warped gate, Rudd balks at the exorbitant cost of 6 million riddles for a single use, while Leon mentions her mother's approval for the expenditure. They find themselves in the Western Territories, within Siren, the bustling capital of the Liberal Kingdom, distinct from the headquarters of the Dragon Annihilation Troop, which is situated elsewhere. Rudd recalls Siren as a desolate city, which in his past was decimated by the onslaught of 7 dragons, leading to the obliteration of the Dragon Annihilation Troop. During their visit, Leon guides Rudd to her residence, which he perceives more as an aristocratic estate than a guild's headquarters. Encountering a gardener, Leon is queried about her presence, to which she responds that her visit is brief, aimed at acquainting Rudd with the guild members. Uncle Harold, the gardener, is pleasantly surprised by Leon's new social connection outside the Dragon Annihilation Troop, and hastily plans to organize a celebratory gathering, an idea Leon quickly dismisses, finding the prospect embarrassing. Upon their arrival inside, the younger members of the Dragon Annihilation Troop bombard Rudd with inquiries, questioning whether he is in peril or if Leon has secured his services for a substantial sum. Leon promptly dismisses the curious crowd. Rudd notes that although it is his inaugural encounter with the troop's members, their demeanor evokes a sense of familiarity, helping him comprehend the drastic transformation in Leon's character following the destruction of Siren. Shortly after, Uncle Harold summons them to the reception room to meet the leader. There they are greeted by Adeline, the leader of the Dragon Annihilation Troop, and Leon's mother. She queries the reason for Leon's unexpected visit during the academic term, jesting about a possible suspension for misconduct. Leon clarifies her intention to visit and introduce Rude. The mention of Rudd's name prompts a reaction of astonishment from Adeline and a notable response from another woman present in the room. The revelation that Leon, known for her limited social aptitude, has befriended someone astounds Liana Chernica, the Midsummer Flame Guildmaster. Rudd acknowledges her, and Leon remarks on Liana's frequent visits to their home. Liana, recognizing Rudd from a previous sparring session, inquires about Hanith's well-being, mentioning her dissatisfaction with the current magic instructor. During this exchange, Leon's mother becomes emotional, expressing gratitude to Rudd for his friendship with Leon and acknowledging her daughter's formidable strength. She recalls an incident where the Academy reported Leon for injuring a peer's wrist. The conversation takes a turn when Leon reveals that Rudd is the student involved in that incident, prompting further surprise. Despite Rudd's assertion that the conflict was instigated by his own careless remarks rather than bullying, Leon's mother insists on an apology from her daughter, emphasizing the inappropriateness of using martial skills for intimidation. Leon offers an apology for her physical altercation with Rudd, prompting her mother to advise greater caution when interacting with ordinary students. Ynex interjects, emphasizing that Rudd is exceptional, citing his impressive combat performance and a potential recruitment by Abel. Leon acknowledges Rudd's prowess and mentions his guidance in teaching her grappling techniques. Intrigued by the prospect of assessing Rudd's capabilities, Leon's mother, a formidable figure in the Dragon Annihilation Troop, expresses a desire to spar with him. Rudd perceives this as a chance to engage with an elite dragon slayer, viewing it as a valuable experience. The anticipation of the sparring match creates a buzz within the guild. The troop leader provides Rudd with their uniform for the duel, and Leon expresses concern over any inconvenience it might cause him, grateful for the opportunity. Rudd looks forward to the match against a top-tier dragon slayer while Leon, somewhat apprehensively, requests her mother to moderate her intensity during the spar. On the sparring field, Rudd and Adeline face off, each armed with wooden swords and limited to using only the mana within their bodies. Medillion stipulates that Rudd's victory will be acknowledged if he successfully lands a blow on her, promising to fulfill one of his wishes should he triumph as the troop's leader. The duel commences with both parties launching and parrying attacks simultaneously. Adeline escalates the confrontation with an aerial assault, which Rudd counters, defending himself adeptly. Observers express astonishment at Rudd's ability to withstand the offensive maneuvers of their leader. Adeline herself is impressed by Rudd's exceptional swordsmanship and flawless technique, especially given his young age of 17. She notes a disparity between his advanced skills and his physical capacity, which somewhat hinders his performance. Nevertheless, she is eager to test the extent of his abilities, interpreting Rudd's growing fatigue as a part of her lenient approach towards younger combatants. As the match progresses, Rudd momentarily hesitates, leading Adeline to question his stamina. Seizing the moment, he channels his mana into a powerful strike, only to have it neutralized by Adeline's mana-based shield, resulting in the fragmentation of his wooden sword, a testament to the precision of his technique. Adeline recognizes Rudd's use of the sky-piercing technique, and is surprised that Daniel has a direct disciple. She invites Rudd to engage once more, seeking to avenge her master. Leon, aware of Rudd's strength, finds the intensity of the spar exceeding her expectations, marveling at her mother's enjoyment of the duel. Rudd claims victory, pointing out that Adeline inadvertently broke the initial rule by using external mana. Obligated to honor their agreement, Adeline prompts Rudd to express his wish. He simply asks for another sparring session under the same conditions. As they resume, Adeline senses Rudd's newfound confidence, noting a distinct change in his aura. During the rematch, Adeline launches an offensive, but Rudd exhibits remarkable reflexes, closing any perceived opportunities for counterattack. He navigates her assaults with precision, displaying a unique fighting style that challenges her predictive capabilities. Despite this, Adeline manages to maintain her defense, urging Rudd to exert his full strength. In the heat of combat, Rudd seizes a tactical moment to discard his sword and execute a surprise maneuver. Adeline quickly understands his strategy, recognizing his intent to use the Stero's fist technique, Earth Tremor. As Rudd unleashes the technique, shattering the ground beneath, he advances on Adeline, who counters just in time, repelling him with a swift kick. After Rudd's fall, Leon questions his determination in a seemingly futile battle. Rudd asserts his victory, having landed a hit on Adeline, who acknowledges her defeat and is ready to fulfill her promise. Rudd requests nothing material but asks for trust in his future words, emphasizing his commitment to prevent any fatalities. Adeline, respecting his request, vows to believe him when the time comes, acknowledging the impending transition of leadership to the new generation and expressing her eagerness to collaborate with him. She playfully refers to him as her future son-in-law, eliciting surprise from both. The narrative foretells the awakening of 7 dragons in the coming years, with the 1,000-formed dragon leading the onslaught, followed by the lightning dragon and then Lai Sha, the delusive dragon, indicating impending challenges and conflicts. In the future, Rudd's team will conquer the deceptive dragon, avenging Leon, though the battle against the 7 dragons will result in casualties within their ranks. Nonetheless, Rudd is determined to prevent the demise of anyone he encountered today, having now allied with the Dragon Annihilation Troop to forewarn them of the impending attack by the delusive dragon. Rudd contacts Leon, addressing the discomfort triggered by a previous jest. As night falls upon their return to the academy, Leon inquires whether Rudd will join her for another visit to the capital. He refrains from answering, instead questioning her presence, as the path to the girls' dormitory diverges from his. Leon clarifies that she is accompanying him back to safeguard against a miscreant rumored to be lurking near the dormitory. At the academy's entrance, Rudd observes a man undressed at night, and a blonde homeless girl wandering in the central flower field. He perceives these individuals as carefree and requests Leon to elaborate on them. The following day, he meets with the Spirit Arts academic advisor, Lillian Stout, to inquire about a student named Linnea Selkett, citing concerns about her behavior. The advisor, initially overwhelmed, enumerates Linnea's unconventional actions, sleeping on the streets, swimming in the central fountain, and hosting solitary barbecue parties on the rooftop. Despite this, she soon composes herself and apologizes for her outburst, reflecting her stress. Lillian then describes Linnea as a prodigiously gifted student with an exceptional connection to spirits, predicting her potential to excel in the field. However, she notes Linnea's excessive love for freedom, evidenced by her habit of crafting paper airplanes from exam sheets or impulsively exiting through windows. Linnea's recent actions, including demolishing a drill hall while experimenting with spirit magic, exacerbate Rudd's concerns about her reckless behavior. He recalls a past conversation where Easier remarked that guiding Linnea to graduation was immensely challenging, a sentiment Rudd initially thought was exaggerated. The professor explains that Iridium's policy permits failing a year, only twice, suggesting that expulsion could be a justified outcome for Linnea's continued misconduct. However, she emphasizes the importance of not squandering Linnea's talent and inquires about Rudd's motive for the meeting. Rudd expresses his worry about a senior with significant potential displaying such erratic behavior. The advisor appeals to Rudd, seeking his assistance in averting Linnea's potential expulsion, underscoring the impact on the nation's prestige and future. She mentions that Linnea tends to disregard adult advice, but is receptive to commendation. The professor hopes that Linnea might heed respectful guidance from a talented junior like Rudd. Rudd finds the task of flattering Linnea challenging, given his discomfort with insincere praise. Nevertheless, the professor places her trust in him to manage the situation. Outside, a butterfly meanders near the window, attracting Linnea's attention, who overhears their conversation. In the garden, Linnea is found sleeping openly, drawing the attention of passing students and rude. The students admire her beauty, speculating on her possible heritage as a hybrid of human and spirit. Rudd approaches and attempts to rouse her, but she simply turns over to continue her slumber. A more forceful nudge from Rudd eventually stirs her, and she inquisitively questions his actions. Rudd inquires about her presence in the garden at such an early hour, to which she responds that she had been admiring the flowers before inadvertently falling asleep. Introducing himself, Rudd explains his visit as a directive from advisor Lillian, establishing his status as her junior. Linnea then queries the purpose of his arrival. Rudd begins with compliments, hoping to engage Linnea positively. She inquires about forming a friendship, but Rudd redirects the conversation to her academic conduct. However, Linnea becomes distracted by a butterfly and chases after it. Rudd then earnestly addresses her, expressing concern about her habitual class absences and the chaos she causes, referencing the recent destruction of a drill hall. Linnea, unfazed, rejoices in the absence of injuries from the incident. Rudd, struggling to maintain composure, questions why she neglects her studies. Linnea confesses her reluctance to graduate, finding solace and beauty in the academy's environment, contrasting it with her cold, snowy hometown. She prefers leisure over academia, aspiring to remain in this idyllic setting indefinitely. Rudd reminds her of the Academy's purpose, to train dragon slayers, and points out the ongoing threat dragons pose to the Empire. Linnea counters, pondering the moral equivalence between humans and dragons and prioritizing her serene daily life over the larger conflict. Rudd challenges Linnea's perception of humans and dragons being akin, leading her to question the distinctions between them. Rudd contends that her isolated experiences in the snowy mountains have shielded her from harsher realities. He explains that beyond the Alpha Empire's secured boundaries, where formidable guilds offer protection, other realms endure relentless devastation. There, dragons perpetrate widespread slaughter, leading to the obliteration of numerous nations. Rudd elaborates that while areas with dragon slayer presence might have some defense, those lacking such guardians are vulnerable to annihilation, even by nascent earth dragons. He confronts her with the harrowing possibility of witnessing the consumption of family and friends by dragons, questioning her empathy and awareness. Linnea's indifferent inquiry about his frustration leads Rudd to a moment of exasperation, where he compares conversing with her to talking to an inanimate wall. He acknowledges her self-centeredness but is taken aback by her profound ignorance. Lena then discloses her motive for being at the Academy, a mere curiosity about the institution her mother once attended. Rudd, frustrated, sarcastically wishes Linnea a peaceful life at the Academy, despite her disruptive behavior. After he departs, Linnea contacts her father using a diamond, expressing her desire to form a close friendship with Rudd. Her father suggests that conflicts can sometimes lay the foundation for strong friendships. Linnea contemplates apologizing to Rudd the next day, while also noting that the Spirit King Fudroa seeks a conversation with him. Rudd reflects on his failed attempt to influence Linnea, recognizing that his temper might have exacerbated the situation. Given her secluded upbringing among spirits in a snowy mountain, he understands her lack of insight into human-dragon conflicts and regrets directing his frustration at her. Rudd ponders how Easier, with his inherent kindness, might have been more effective in persuading her and questions his own approach. As he proceeds to class, Rudd witnesses a confrontation between Hanneth and Leon. Hanneth, upset, questions Leon's presence after an incident involving a wrist injury and demands her departure, hinting at her suspicious activities near the dorm. Leon visits to rectify the fallout from her disciplinary action, bringing fruits for Rudd and clarifying the spar incident, which only resulted in a minor injury. Hanneth realizes the gravity of their actions. Leaving the capital, visiting Leon's home, and the ensuing altercation leading to Rudd's injury. Contemplating reporting the breach of school regulations. Leon extends an apology for the misunderstanding, elaborating on the complex motivations behind the spar, which prompts a surprising shift in Hannah's demeanor, leading her to propose friendship. However, Hannah's subsequent jibe about further injuries to Leon and Balak dampens the mood, causing Leon to depart in distress. Rudd, puzzled by Hannah's harsh words, is rebuffed when he inquires, and Hanath, in a mix of anger and desperation, implores him to stay and be her sole confidant. Following this interaction, during a class where the professor mandates the completion of a report, Rudd encounters Lenya, who unexpectedly approaches him post-session, inquiring about his hunger, signaling a potential reconciliation or further interaction. Lenya escorts Rudd to the school rooftop, where she has prepared a barbecue lunch, urging him to eat while the food, grilled to perfection on the Mishi grills, is still warm. During the meal, Lenya expresses remorse for her previous self-absorbed responses, acknowledging Rudd's well-meaning intentions. Rudd sees this moment as an opportunity to reinforce his concerns about her future, highlighting her qualities and the paradox of her potential unfulfilled due to academic negligence. Lenya is touched by Rudd's admiration and contemplates a shift in her behavior. Rudd finds this turn of events less challenging than anticipated. Lenya renews her offer of friendship, which Rudd gladly accepts. She commits to regular class attendance and diligent exam preparation, while Rudd pledges his support to ensure her newfound determination remains steadfast. Lenya informs Rudd that her father, the Spirit King Fodro, wishes to speak with him privately. Upon her departure, Rudd respectfully addresses the Ice Spirit King, who then inquires about Rudd's status as a regressor. Surprised by Fodro's insight, Rudd learns that the Spirit King has perceived the temporal reversal, identifying a familiar essence emanating from him. Fodro elucidates that the spirit and physical realms exist as separate dimensions, interconnected through a passageway established by spirit contracts, with spirit tamers bridging these dimensions. Recently, a nostalgic disturbance from the physical realm affected the spirits. Fodro, present within this interdimensional threshold, was enveloped by the magic pervading the physical world, allowing him to detect the temporal shift. Despite this, the Spirit King confesses to retaining no memories from the physical realm prior to the time reversal. Rudd clarifies to the Spirit King that he was not a warrior but rather a burden who merely accompanied the true fighters. He commits to recounting the forgotten tales of their world, sharing the narrative of Aesir's disappearance alongside the Void Dragon. The Spirit King, reflecting on the nature of the Void Dragon, posits that it is cautious and would not engage in a self-destructive act. He speculates that Aesir and the dragon might have been in a defensive struggle, leading to a possible retreat by the dragon, to regain its strength, inadvertently trapping Aesir in an alternate dimension. The discussion shifts to potential locations, including the possibility of a Void Dragon's nest on a floating island. Rudd acknowledges the complexity of accessing such a place, emphasizing the need for thorough preparation and enhanced strength to confront the impending challenges and adversities. Rudd inquires about the dragon responsible for the temporal recurrence, but the Spirit King Fodro is bound by an ancient oath, preventing disclosure of this information. This leads Rudd to ponder the true nature of the entity powerful enough to bind the Spirit King to such a vow. Subsequently, Fodro queries Rudd about his daughter Lenya's fate prior to the regression, prompting a recount of the ice dragon Nephrine's tale. Despite exhaustive efforts, the dragon remained undefeated, leading to Lenya's decision to entrap both herself and Nephrine in an expansive ice seal, maintaining a smile even in her final moments. Fodro interprets her smile as acceptance of her chosen path, signifying the optimal decision under those circumstances. Expressing trust and rude, Fodro imparts a fragment of his spirit into Rudd's heart, a process painful yet empowering. He emphasizes that the infusion of the spirit's power will be beneficial for Rudd and signifies his investment in both his and his daughter's safeguarding. Despite its diminutive size, the spirit fragment given by Fodro causes Rudd immense pain, leading him to protest, especially given his previously non-existent affinity with spirits. Fodro reassures him that this bond will enable a connection with his powers and thoughts, regardless of Rudd's location. Concerned about how to justify the situation to Lenya, Rudd is interrupted by her return, questioning the newfound scent reminiscent of her father. Rudd improvises, suggesting that their recent friendship agreement is the cause, a notion Fodro supports. They agree to return to class, with Rudd expressing hope for Lenya's improved punctuality. Weeks later, with the spirit fragment still embedded in Rudd's heart, Fodro prompts him to expedite his meeting with Lenya at the library, indicating a continued intricate relationship between their fates. A messenger delivers a letter to Rudd, containing the findings from the Clouded Moon Guild's investigation into his brother, Aesir Donatos, as requested from Guildmaster Abel White during a previous encounter in the school canteen. The letter, filled with numerous reports, indicates the completion of the promised investigation. Yet, despite the extensive intelligence collected, it all points to one stark reality. There's no evidence of easier Donatos ever existing in this world, leading to the daunting realization that his brother might not be part of this world's timeline. Confronted with this revelation, Fodroa inquires about Rudd's subsequent actions. Rudd, grappling with the implications, mentions he has two potential strategies to address the situation, reflecting the complexity of navigating a world where his brother's existence is seemingly erased. Rudd contemplates two strategies to uncover his brother's whereabouts. One involves searching within the Heavenly Spirit, a repository for the sky-piercing technique, and the other entails investigating the Void Dragon's lair on the floating island. However, both tasks present significant challenges, including bypassing the Guardians of the Pathway to the floating island. Rudd recognizes the complexity of both approaches and considers the necessity of locating a wizard specialized in dimensional phenomena to facilitate access to the required dimension. At the library, he meets Linnea and proceeds to Hanneth for her training, where Hanneth's frustration at managing both individuals leads to a heated exchange, upsetting Linnea. Amidst this, Rudd receives a telepathic message from Daniel, summoning him to his office. Before departing, Rudd entrusts Block with overseeing Linnea and Hanneth, humorously cautioning against any potential altercations between the two. Given their brief acquaintance, Rudd, instructed by Balak to mitigate any conflicts, hastily leaves his seat amid Hanneth's vociferous inquiries about his premature departure, promising a swift return. During their study session, Linnea questions Hanneth's perpetual irritability, leading to an unexpected self-reflection from Hanneth about her own temperament. Linnea mentions Hanneth's pre-existing disdain and her distinct reddish eyes, which Hanneth attributes to heredity, expressing frustration over repeated queries about Rudd's return. The dialogue escalates as Linnea probes Hanneth's ability to sustain friendships with her demeanor, eliciting a retort highlighting Linnea's naivety and academic negligence. Hanneth criticizes Linnea's lack of diligence, while Linnea counters by challenging Hanneth's perceived superiority. The tension nearly culminates in a physical altercation, leaving Balak in a quandary over restoring harmony and eagerly anticipating Rudd's return to defuse the situation. Upon entering Daniel's office, Rudd inquires about the urgent telepathic summons, only to be introduced to Inbrick, the Sky Sword Immortal and Rudd's Grandmaster. Greetings are exchanged warmly, with Fodroa acknowledging familiarity with Ain's reputation, though he has never met her. Ain's youthful appearance belies her centenarian status, attributed to her advanced training that halted her aging process, a feat achieved at the six-wing level of the sky-piercing technique. Rudd recalls Ain's legendary triumph over the thousand-formed dragon. Meanwhile, Daniel is dispatched to procure cakes, leaving Rudd in alone for a confidential discussion. Ain probed Rudd's awareness of Professor Damian Grace, hinting at a clandestine link between the professor and the thousand-formed dragon, urging discretion about their conversation. Within the esteemed faculty of Academy Iridium, Professor Damian Grace is rumored to possess the heart of the thousand-formed dragon, a phenomenon shrouded in mystery regarding its coexistence within a human host. Gradually, the dragon's essence pervades Damian's soul, threatening to unleash a cataclysm once complete control is attained. In a previous life, Jeremy preemptively orchestrated Damian's suicide to prevent the Dragonheart's potential awakening, a decision unanimously supported at the time. Unbeknownst to all, Jeremy clandestinely extracted the dragon's heart post-Damian's demise, seemingly ignorant of the impending danger. Subsequently, the Lightning Dragon Harma's assault on Terrarium unfolded, during which Rudd, then inexperienced, could only stand by. The ensuing battle, fought to safeguard humanity, resulted in the demise of Professor Daniel, the Sky Sword Immortal, and numerous dragon slayers. Presently, Rudd is curious about Inbrick's knowledge of Damian's situation, to which she discloses her purpose at the Academy: to vigilantly monitor Damian and preempt any potential threats. Rudd inquired whether Daniel was aware of the current situation. She responded that she had refrained from informing him due to his close rapport with other faculty members. She mentioned overhearing discussions about the advisor's unanimous preference for Rudd and sought his opinion on Damian. Rudd shared that Damian, initially reticent, had gradually begun to offer counsel and narrate anecdotes. He described Damian as somewhat reserved yet not malevolent. Brick instructed Rudd to promptly notify her, should he perceive any alteration in Damian's demeanor or emergence of hostility. Rudd contemplated that the knowledge of Damian's clandestine matter was confined to a select few, positioning him as the sole individual capable of alerting the Sky Sword Immortal, Inbrick, in advance. Rudd inquired of Ain Brick whether Jeremy had attempted communication with her, expressing concern over Jeremy's unstable ideology and his readiness to sacrifice anything to realize his ambitions, fearing an imminent mishap. Inbrick opined that neutralizing Damian, obliterating the thousand-formed dragon's heart, represented the most logical strategy. However, Rudd contested this approach as incorrect. He inquired about potential alternatives, to which Rudd responded that they must be identified within the remaining time frame. Subsequently, Daniel entered the office, delivering the requested items to Brick, who then announced her imminent departure. Later, Rudd returned to the deserted library, discovering a note from Balak indicating their expulsion and subsequent confrontation on the rooftop. In the meantime, Leon encountered Rudd, questioning his presence. Rudd, visibly stressed by impending examinations, requested solitude. Leon, undeterred, probed whether Rudd's avoidance stemmed from peer disapproval of their friendship. The conversation shifted as Rudd inquired about Leon's discontent related to Haneth, leading to her confession of past transgressions aimed at alienating Haneth. The dialogue then turned to Rudd's research on the thousand-form dragon, one of the legendary 7 dragons. Historical records denote that a century prior, the inaugural dragon slayer, later revered as the great hero, vanquished the 7 dragon kings. A decade passed, the thousand-form dragon re-emerged in the southern continent, claiming the lives of numerous dragon slayers. Following the calamity, only a select few dragon slayers remained, including the Sky Sword immortal Indy Brick and Daniel Gold. Leon questioned Rudd's contemplation of an abrupt departure from the academy to infiltrate the forbidden southern continent. Rudd dismissed the notion, jesting about not volunteering as prey in a dragon's nest. Leon's inquiry stemmed from her deep-seated animosity towards dragons, prompting Rudd to declare his resolve to exterminate all dragons, aspiring to amass sufficient strength to obliterate their existence entirely as recompense for his losses. Traz and Rion, probing further, questioned the veracity of the 7 dragons' existence, citing the resemblance of the creature from the thousand-form incident to the historical records, hence its nomenclature. Rudd affirmed their existence, labeling them as monstrous entities. He recounted the devastation caused by the thousand-formed dragon a decade ago, an ordeal he had endured and was adamant about not reliving. Leon expressed concern, fearing harm or loss to those around him in the pursuit of his vendetta. Rudd abruptly stood up, declaring it time for dinner and his intention to eat, with Leon volunteering to assist him in achieving his objectives and devising tactics to conquer the 7 dragons, or possibly establishing a new guild. Rudd inquired about the Dragon Annihilation Troop, to which Leon expressed confidence in her mother's endorsement of her choices. Subsequently, Leon returned to her dormitory, where she encountered Claire, who questioned her absence from the supplementary lectures. Claire then escorted her to the training hall, suggesting that it was time to evaluate the progress made from their rigorous sessions over the past 6 weeks. Once there, they engaged in a sparring session, during which Claire reflected on the purpose of the lectures as character development, acknowledging the gratification derived from mentoring adept learners. Claire expressed admiration for Leon's grappling techniques and inquired about her training source. Although Leon had mastered counterattacks, Claire managed to regain stability and counter with a kick, causing Leon to fall. Claire acknowledged Leon's improved skills, while Leon credited her learning to another mentor, hinting at Rudd's instruction. Leon praised Rudd's explanatory skills, contrasting them with another's. Meanwhile, Rudd, absorbed in contemplation, encountered Fodroa, who inquired about his initial outing with Leon. Rudd reflected on the differences between Leon's past and present personas, considering them distinct. The subsequent day brought a written examination, with students engaging in discussions about their preparatory efforts, including Rudd, who was focused on his studies. Post-exam, the students congregated at a cafe, where Haneth boasted about completing the exam faster than Rudd by 5 minutes. Balak claimed to finish in 1 minute, leading to Haneth's jest that he likely penned a plea for clemency to the professor. She remarked on the futility of compelling Balak to study, likening it to the challenge of educating a notably eccentric senior. As Lenya overheard Haneth's comments about her, she retorted that her academic performance had improved since studying with Rudd, leading to a tense exchange of looks between them. Meanwhile, Rudd and Balak were engrossed in their lunch, seemingly indifferent to the surrounding drama. Rudd then contacted Fodroa, requesting intervention to mitigate the tension, but Fodroa speculated that the confrontation might paradoxically bring them closer, although he doubted any reconciliation even after a decade. Balak shifted the conversation to inquire about Rudd's preparedness for the forthcoming practical exam, to which Rudd speculated that it would entail another unpredictable terrain. The next day marked the commencement of the first practical exam, where Arthur announced that the practical assessment would occur in the specialized test areas designed for Iridium, situated on the fringes of the Alpia Empire. These sites, scattered across the continent, featured a diverse array of magical creatures. Influenced by the local climate and environment, students were to be transported to their respective examination locations via warp gate, with the objective to trace and eliminate a dragon, all while evading the disruptions caused by other magical beasts. Arthur emphasized that conventional swordsmanship would barely inflict damage on a dragon, highlighting its superior intelligence and magical resilience compared to ordinary magical beasts. He expressed confidence in the students' awareness of the stakes involved in becoming a bona fide dragon slayer before initiating the practical exam. Rudd, reflecting on a similar exam from his previous life where Leon had overwhelmingly bested him in the final stage of an additional test, proceeded through the warp gate. He arrived at the examination site, a gathering place for participants from across the nation, where ordinary magical creatures posed no significant threat. Given the presence of faculty and instructors to oversee and intervene in perilous situations, the primary objective remained focused on a singular beast. In pursuit of the dragon, Rudd requested Fedroa's assistance in tracking it, which was declined. Subsequently, he encountered a beast launching an assault, which he narrowly evaded by leaping away. Armed with his sword, Rudd engaged the creature, delivering a series of attacks. After slaying the beast, Rudd anticipated the Earth Dragon's arrival, lured by the scent of blood. However, instead of the dragon, he encountered Wilhelm, who warned of an approaching enormous entity, urging a swift retreat. Their conversation was cut short as a massive dragon appeared and launched an attack. Rudd attempted to counter with his sword, but the dragon's strength was formidable, threatening the integrity of his weapon. Forced into a defensive position, Rudd utilized his mana to regain stability. Having practiced the sky-piercing technique for 2 months, he believed the power of 3 Win, a component of the technique, would be sufficient to defeat the dragon. Seizing the opportunity, Rudd executed an attack, driving his sword into the dragon's mouth, aiming to exploit its vulnerability. Wilhelm, observing from a distance, was astonished by Rudd's fearless engagement with the dragon, using his sword, despite Wilhelm's interjection that such an endeavor was futile due to previous failed attempts with his own sword, against the dragon's robust scales. Rudd instructed him to observe silently. Rudd, aware of the dragon's vulnerabilities such as its eye sockets, respiratory system, and joints, aimed to exploit these softer areas. Despite his persistent attacks, Rudd's sword eventually shattered, leading him to ponder the adequacy of his weapon for severing the dragon's neck bone. He recognized the challenge of defeating a dragon with merely a student-grade sword, regardless of the equipment's quality. Inquiring about spare swords, he learned of Wilhelm's similarly damaged weapon. Wilhelm was astounded by Rudd's capability to incapacitate a dragon with such a sword. Rudd, questioning the dragon's vitality, received gratitude from Wilhelm for the rescue and an apology for a previous misunderstanding. Wilhelm, impressed by Rudd's prowess, expressed a desire to become his rival, acknowledging his own overestimated strength before witnessing Rudd's combat skills. Wilhelm recognized Rudd's exceptional strength and felt his own abilities paled in comparison. Rudd, puzzled by Wilhelm's self-deprecation, accepted the rivalry proposal, while Fedroa interpreted this as a manifestation of Rudd's past life. Subsequently, a professor announced the conclusion of Group A's practical exam, instructing them to proceed to the designated meeting point. From a distance, Gerald D. Graham, the director of Arabian Academy, observed Rudd through binoculars, remarking on his potential as an unrefined gem. Consistent with the rumors, Daniel inquired about Gerald's assessment of Rudd, to which Gerald responded that, despite high expectations set by faculty praises, Rudd exceeded them. Daniel boasted of Rudd's extraordinary capabilities at merely 17 years old, predicting his success in subsequent tests and foreseeing his rise as an unparalleled and exceptional dragon slayer. Gerald suggested that Rudd's destiny might extend beyond mere warrior status, potentially embodying the hero of freedom, akin to Vanner, the legendary progenitor of dragon slayers, in a time when humans were merely dragon prey. In an era where earth dragons traversed the ground and their airborne counterparts dominated the skies, the colossal dragons, rivaling mountains in stature, claimed sovereignty over both realms. Among these, the Draconites, a distinguished breed, stood out. Although humanoid in appearance, they possessed superior intellect and strength, exploiting humans as prey and trampling their rights. Gerald disclosed that this very location, once a battleground where humans were pitted as gladiators for Draconite entertainment, had transformed into the Iridium Amphitheater, a monument to the Dragon Slayer's triumph and liberty. Daniel, as the heir to the sky-piercing technique, comprehended both the historical accounts and the ancestral memories. In this brutal epoch, Vanner, once a mere gladiator under Draconite oppression, rose in stature. He united his oppressed peers and ignited a revolution culminating in a protracted struggle for emancipation. He, along with the pioneer cohort of dragon slayers, banished the Draconites beyond the Great Northern Mountain. Ultimately, even their sovereign, the seventh dragon, was confined, heralding an era of liberty for humanity. Daniel, familiar with this narrative, regarded it as a legendary tale often recounted by bards. Despite accepting the story, he harbored uncertainties. He inquired of Gerald why, given Vanner's strength, the dragons were merely expelled instead of being eradicated, and why only the seventh dragon was sealed rather than eliminated. Gerald responded, emphasizing that the past actions were orchestrated to ensure humanity's survival and dignity. Subsequently, as the practical examination concluded, The instructors directed the students to relinquish their arms and assemble at the specified site. Additionally, the tournament brackets and the local for the impending matches, scheduled in 3 days, were displayed in the main hall. On the advent of the supplementary test, the students aspired to claim the armor from the Iranian treasury, deemed rightfully theirs. Only the elite contenders from each group would be admitted to the test. Hanath and Rudd, both contenders and acquaintances, prepared for participation, with Hanath asserting her intent to compete without concession. He inquired of Balak about his rationale for competing, given his aversion to weaponry. Balak elucidated that engaging with formidable adversaries is pivotal for physical enhancement, despite facing a potent challenger. Hanath vociferously warned Balak of dire consequences should he succumb to Leon. Questioning Rudd about Hanath's prowess, he learned of her exceptional strength, distinguishing her as the preeminent novice. The duel commenced belatedly, with Balak's tardy arrival by 10 minutes. Upon initiation, Balak acknowledged Leon's formidable presence, deeming him a worthy adversary for his esteemed physique. Leon launched the first attack, yet was taken aback by Balak's ability to thwart it using mere muscular defense. Although Leon's rapid and extensive strikes were commendable, Balak perceived the inherent vulnerability in such wide-ranging assaults. Contrarily, Balak relentlessly assailed her without presenting any vulnerabilities, exhibiting no inclination to evade her offensive maneuvers. In the midst of combat, she marveled at Balak's resilience against her sword aura, questioning whether he had integrated mana with his musculature to enhance its toughness. Balak internally acknowledged the efficacy of her strikes, feeling the pain deep in his bones, and speculated on the superiority of her mana. In response, he discarded his shirt to unleash his full mana potential and advanced to challenge her sword directly. However, she evaded, causing him to stumble and fall. Her exceptional speed allowed her to dominate the encounter, employing kicks and punches instead of her sword. Determined to match her prowess, Balak prepared to exert his utmost power, drawing forth his mana intensely. However, an unforeseen intervention by a senior led to his disqualification for impropriety, resulting in Leon's victory by default. Hanath jokingly proposed disassociating from Balak, attributing his defeat to being vanquished by a female competitor. Meanwhile, Rudd, captivated by Leon, remained silent until Hanath's reminder of their impending duel. It was then hinted that Hanath, known as the Spolia or Flame Witch, would eventually ascend as the paramount pyromancer, her latent talents flourishing to surpass all peers in subsequent battles. Hanath had established her reputation through intricate techniques and astute judgment. However, facing Rudd Donatas proved challenging, leading to an unexpected defeat. Despite this setback, she resolved to improve in future encounters. Rudd, victorious, extended assistance to Hanath, who requested guidance in dagger arts, a request he declined, confident in her independent proficiency. Meanwhile, the faculty recognized the exceptional talent among the newcomers, announcing the final round of the supplementary test between Rudd and Leon. Leon, however, was hesitant to confront Rudd, reflecting her reluctance through avoidance. Despite her evasion, Rudd pursued, questioning her absence and urging her return for the imminent final match. Leon disclosed her intention to withdraw, unwilling to face Rudd, a decision that incited his ire, as he misconstrued her withdrawal as an act of condescension. While Leon is surprised by his behavior, Rudd forcefully asserts that she must not evade the confrontation, determined to secure a victory against her. He recalls the moment Leon ceased to breathe in his previous existence, desperately attempting to revive her, as victory had eluded him. Yet, she perished before him. Her constant derogatory references to him as trash, punk, ignited his animosity, matching her disdain for all aspects of him. At that juncture, the Dragon King materialized, criticizing Leon's decision as imprudent given her capability to eliminate the illusory dragon, lamenting her demise while safeguarding someone as insignificant as him. Rudd contemplates how she seemed isolated and aloof, recognizing that his ambition was not to outdo her, but to pursue his vengeance by slaying dragons. Subsequently, a senior official announces the cancellation of the final round of the supplementary examination due to the absence of an adversary. Leon's absence led to Red Donatas being declared the victor. Amidst speculation from the students about her absence and potential fear of Rudd, he resolves not to lose her in this existence. Leon, pondering outside the academy, assumes the additional tests have concluded, yet Rudd confronts her with visible anger. Recalling their past where she frequented this spot during distress and their frequent conflicts, he challenges her, placing his sword near her, insisting on a final duel. Questioning his insistence on the duel, Leon hears Rudd's uncompromising stance that she cannot escape this confrontation. As he launches an attack with his sword, Leon evades, expressing her reluctance to engage in battle. Nonetheless, Rudd's determination to combat her prevails. Leon observes the extraordinary heaviness of Rudd's sword aura, confident in her mana shield's resilience, yet stunned by its subsequent shattering. Compelled to engage seriously, She wields an intensified sword aura, urging Rudd to cease, recognizing the limits of his strength. Rudd acknowledges his inability to defeat her without employing hypersword aura, yet he remains eager to ascertain the outcome of their duel. Leon reiterates that only a hypersword or a potent magic spell could counteract hypersword aura. Rudd, setting his sword aside, engages Leon in close combat, against her preference to maintain distance and not succumb to his strategy. However, Rudd quickly closes the gap, delivering a powerful punch to her face. Despite Leon's efforts to retaliate, Rudd's exceptional reflexes and anticipatory skills, reminiscent of his sparring sessions with her mother, allow him to dominate the skirmish. As the battle progresses, Rudd perceives his training as futile, given his inability to use hypersword aura, which places him at a strategic disadvantage. Recognizing this, he unsheathes his sword, signaling a shift in his approach to the duel. In their intense combat, Leon is astonished to see Rudd utilizing aura from his wings, reminiscent of her hypersword aura, albeit with distinct mastery. Overwhelmed by the force, Leon collapses, questioning Rudd's satisfaction with his victory. Despite conquering the adversary who once belittled him, Rudd experiences a void and discontent. Leon accuses him of compelling her into battle without disclosing his motives, responding with fury and striking him, labeling him irrational. As she confronts him, Rudd confesses his desire for recognition through victory, acknowledging her superior strength as unattainable for him. Leon, puzzled by his rationale, questions his sanity, prompting Rudd to disclose her sacrificial act in his past life. At this moment, Fodro intervenes, advising Rudd to withhold further revelations, yet he persistently confesses the impact of her sacrifice and her bequeathed legacy, leaving Leon astounded. Leon questions the credibility of Rudd's assertions, to which he responds that belief is her prerogative, acknowledging his inability to substantiate his claim, yet asserting the truth of his regression to the past as a second opportunity. Leon probes further into her past acquaintance with him and her destined path, leading Rudd to disclose her previous existence marred by vengeance, during which she disregarded him as inconsequential. He admits to risking his life in confrontations due to her formidable yet abrasive nature. Leon inquires whether their initial altercation stemmed from this history, with Rudd expressing a desire to challenge her, underestimating her strength, which incites her anger. She questions the rationale behind his teaching her grappling techniques, despite his aversion towards her, to which Rudd explains it was a strategy to enhance her strength, aiming for victory over her. Despite their past-trained relationship, Leon acknowledges the present as distinct, given Rudd's admission of it being his second chance. Leon extends her apologies for her past demeanors, regretting her harsh treatment and neglect, which Rudd rebukes, questioning the sincerity of apologizing for forgotten actions. She clarifies her transformation from her previous existence, revealing her affection for him. The subsequent morning, Rudd awakens from a dream about Leon, questioning Fodre on its reality, only to be informed that it was indeed not a dream. Reflecting on his flight following Leon's admission, he contemplates ignoring her confession. As the day to receive his reward for the additional test arrives, Rudd proceeds to meet Geralt, explaining his fatigue as apprehension for entering the treasury. The Iridium's treasury, a repository of the Dragon Slayer's ancient legacy, houses invaluable artifacts and weapons. Access to the treasury is granted post-tournament. Subject to approval from the Academy's head and a majority of professors, a privilege Rudd has long awaited. Previously, he possessed a weapon from the treasury shared with Easier and Leon, yet in this life his brother's absence is irreplaceable. Upon arriving at the Iridium's treasury with Gerald, it is unveiled that the treasury not only holds Iridium's riches, but also encapsulates the legacy of Dragon Slayers. Upon entering the treasury, Rudd is met with artifacts of the highest caliber. Fodro inquires if he seeks anything specific. Rudd locates the heavenly-defying sword Demios, which Fodro identifies as the weapon of Vanner, the inaugural Dragon Slayer. This sword, notable for its ability to sever mana flow and neutralize advanced magic, piques Rudd's interest. When asked if he aspires to emulate Hero of Honor, Rudd clarifies his respect for the legend, but expresses a divergent path, intending to eradicate dragons rather than seal them, influenced by Easier's use of the sword in his previous life and its efficacy against formidable draconic beings. An object strikes Rudd's foot, prompting Gerald to comment on its non-weapon nature and ambiguous magical properties. However, Rudd recognizes it, recalling an incident involving Desir and a mysterious occurrence in the sky, linked to the professor's suicide. Shortly thereafter, the object shatters, revealing a dragon, indicating it to be the stealing stone of the lightning dragon Harma. Rudd recalls his first encounter with the existence of the seven dragons at a time when he was deficient in skills and resolve. The haunting memories of their dreadful roars and the foul odor of charred flesh remain vivid decades later. He ponders the presence of the lightning dragon's stealing stone in the Iridium's treasury, noting the absence of any protective enchantments, suggesting that the lightning dragon did not invade Iridium but was there from the outset. Rudd queries Fudro about the potential awakening of the lightning dragon, learning that the seal's integrity is compromised, likely to fail within 2 years. He reflects on his past life, recognizing the timing of the lightning dragon invasion as shortly after Professor Damien's demise. The activation of the lightning dragon is attributed to Jeremy's theft of the thousand-formed dragon's heart, linking these events to the impending threat. Fudroa inquires if Rudd plans to take the stealing stone with him, to which Rudd affirms, recognizing it as a harbinger of catastrophe, necessitating advanced strategic planning. Fudroa then poses an unusual question regarding Rudd's stance on slaying dragons, should he encounter a benevolent one. Rudd dismisses the possibility of a good dragon, asserting that any such entity would be deemed a target for elimination. They acknowledge the inevitability of the seal's degradation within 6 months to 2 years, emphasizing the importance of preparedness for the forthcoming event. Subsequently, Rudd attends Sir Damien's class, noting the unchanged atmosphere. Sir Damien questions the rationale behind Rudd's attendance given his superior dagger skills. Rudd expresses a desire to continue learning from Sir Damien, valuing his experience and respecting him as a former dragon slayer. However, Sir Damien remains silent, leading Rudd to speculate on his potential remorse or concealed guilt. Rudd believes Sir Damien is aware of his origins from Dussel, likely linked to the possession of the thousand-formed dragon's heart, which raised his birthplace. He strategizes to elicit Sir Damien's remorse to uncover the truth. Rudd references Dishul, a village formerly on the Kalaman Kingdom's fringes, now obliterated. He recounts the idyllic days of trapping wild animals with his father and enjoying his mother's warm stew, disrupted by the dragon's devastation. This revelation visibly unsettles Sir Damien. Continuing, Rudd details the annihilation of tranquil villages, mentioning his and his brother's sole survival. Sir Damien's inquiry about his brother leads to Rudd's acknowledgement of their separation. Sir Damien abruptly concludes the lecture, suggesting the continuation of the story later. Outside, Rudd, feeling unexpectedly overwhelmed by guilt, resolves to compel Sir Damien to disclose more. Fudroa, however, questions the impact of Rudd's story on Sir Damien and the possibility of it being disregarded. Rudd remains convinced that Sir Damien, burdened with remorse, is not inherently malevolent and anticipates his eventual disclosure. Despite the passage of time since their conversation, Sir Damien has yet to respond, leading Rudd to believe that he will soon reveal crucial information to facilitate Rudd's strategic planning. Rudd has achieved the ability to manifest 4 wings and utilize the Sword River in the subspace, which aligns inversely with the cerebral aspect of the Light Dragon. Fudroa inquires about the existence of a specific space in the Chun 6 report, to which Rudd explains that part of the Heavenly Spirit constitutes a personal space capable of air manipulation, allowing his elder brother in his past life to employ various weapons within this subspace. Fudroa questions the potential defensive utility of this inner space in urgent situations, and Rudd acknowledges the possibility of accessing it. Outside, Rudd encounters Leon and Balik engaged in combat. Leon suggests Rudd should attire himself appropriately for training, but he retorts that Haneth has raised no objections to his state of undress. Utilizing his spirit magic, Rudd adjusts his body temperature to negate the need for removing his shirt, eliciting surprise from his companions who inquire about his acquisition of this magic. Rudd indicates he has mastered it some time ago and urges them to cease their skirmish. Leon queries Rudd's lack of response to her previous confession, sparking Haneth's curiosity about the matter. Leon discloses her expressed feelings for Rudd, awaiting his response. Their discussion is interrupted by a disturbance outside. Peering out, they observe Wilhelm entangled in a conflict with 3 boys, defending Rudd's honor and demanding their apology for disparaging remarks. Wilhelm asserts Rudd as his rival, claiming the boys lack the entitlement to insult with vile language. However, the confrontation escalates as one of the boys forcefully knocks Wilhelm down, preparing to strike him again. Rudd intervenes in the altercation, seizing one of the boys and striking him with formidable force to Wilhelm's emotional relief. Post-assault, Rudd interrogates the seniors about their motive for assaulting Wilhelm, learning that their actions were instigated by Jeremy Tubal, the student president. Subsequently, Rudd hastens to confront Jeremy, brushing past a student attempting to halt him. Jeremy dismisses the student, signaling his readiness to address the situation with Rudd. Upon her departure, Jeremy inquires about Rudd's reason for the visit. Rudd, driven by anger, dismisses the offer to sit and demands an explanation from Jeremy. He questions Jeremy's involvement in orchestrating Brett's derogatory comments towards him. Jeremy expresses surprise at the accusation, denying any wrongdoing and suggesting a misunderstanding. He also mentions a prior harsh exchange during the test, proposing a desire for dialogue with Rudd. Jeremy initiates the dialogue by noting Rudd's frequent interactions with Damien Grace and previously cautioning him about Damien's peril. He advises Rudd to distance himself from Damien, unaware of his knowledge until Rudd reveals Damien's possession of the thousand-form dragon's heart. Jeremy is taken aback. Puzzled by Rudd's continued association with Damien despite this knowledge, he speculates that the Skysword Immortal might have instructed Rudd to monitor Damien and report any threats. Rudd firmly states his awareness of Jeremy's motives, vowing to prevent Damien's demise this time. Concurrently, Damien contemplates disclosing to Rudd the truth about possessing the thousand-form dragon's heart and the circumstances leading to it from his childhood. He expressed a desire to hear tales of dragon slayers, aspiring to emulate his grandfather, a retired dragon slayer himself. His earliest memory is the comforting scent of coffee and the feel of his grandfather's large hand tousling his hair. Orphaned at a young age due to his dragon-slaying parents' demise, he was nurtured by his grandfather, whose dedication ensured he never felt the void of parental loss, instilling in him the ambition to become a formidable dragon slayer. However, he encountered the challenge of mana hypersensitivity, an uncommon affliction where the individual's body adversely reacts to mana, the essential life force. This condition subjected him to intense agony, akin to relentless torrents within his veins, despite numerous consultations with various medical experts. Confined to his bed for years, he existed in a precarious state with no improvement in his condition, eventually losing touch with the world outside. During a moment of despair, his grandfather presented him with a dragon heart, asserting it would restore his health. Despite reluctance, he consumed the heart under his grandfather's insistence. Now reflecting with tears, he believes his grandfather was not at fault, having acted solely to save his life, and urges Rudd not to blame him, acknowledging the heart's origin and its cost to others' lives. Meanwhile, Hanneth, preoccupied with thoughts of Leon and her own confession to Rudd, struggles to focus during a training lecture with Lyanna. Lyanna, recognizing her distraction, suggests it would be more beneficial for Hanneth to rest than to train ineffectively, leading to an early conclusion of the session. Hanneth, in conversation with a classmate, contemplates the dynamics of friendships changing with new romantic relationships, pondering whether her concern for Rudd is purely platonic or if deeper feelings are involved. Rudd inquires about the alchemy club upon entering, expressing his desire to join. As he completes the application form, a girl inquires of Hanneth if Rudd is the individual she mentioned earlier. Shortly thereafter, she departs, entrusting Hanneth to introduce Rudd to the club. Handing over the application, Rudd's interest in crafting potions and medicinal concoctions surprises Hanneth, who then directs him to wait while she retrieves research records. Rudd's attention is drawn to Hanneth's research on heart-stroke disease, which describes mana as a vital force permeating the body. Its full scope still a subject of ongoing study despite centuries of discovery. This elusive power has given rise to various unique physiological conditions and maladies yet to be fully understood. Heart-stroke disease, characterized by the body's inability to contain an overabundance of mana, leading to fatal fevers, is mentioned as one such condition. This affliction bears resemblance yet distinct differences to Damien's mana hypersensitivity. Hanneth's past life was devoted to developing remedies for her sister Lila Harpolia, who was afflicted with heart stroke, reflecting her long-standing commitment to medical research. Hanneth discovered a cure for heart stroke, but tragically, she arrived too late to save her sister, Lila, who passed away before receiving treatment. In the months following Lila's funeral, Leon remarked that Hanneth spent her days in mourning, not eating, consumed by grief. Balak attributed her sorrow to the loss of a family member, but pointed out the growing unrest within the Midsummer Flame Guild, due to the prolonged vacancy of its leadership role. In a moment of frustration, he confronted Hanneth, who was grieving in her sister's room, challenging her to resume her responsibilities to the guild and questioning her commitment in the wake of her sister's death. Hanneth, enraged, demanded he refrain from such provocations, leading to an outburst where she unleashed her magic, incinerating the room. Balak and Leon, outside, anticipated such a reaction. Hanneth questioned his rationale for instigating a conflict he could not win, to which he responded with a provocative remark about her mental state. In the present, Hanneth, noticing Rudd reading her research, confronts him. Rudd, in turn, questions her focus on such a complex disease as heart stroke. Hanneth discloses the grim reality of heart stroke as an ailment deemed incurable, with even esteemed physicians and noble priests failing to find a remedy, leaving her sister in a state akin to a living corpse. Rudd counters, asserting the disease's curability, referencing a temperamental woman who was conducting research on its cure but has since passed away. Acknowledging his limited alchemy knowledge, gleaned only from her, he suggests that with the appropriate components, concocting the cure would be feasible for Hanneth, offering his assistance in exchange for potions. The narrative shifts to the cultural significance of Irradium, which annually hosts a festival in late spring commemorating the dawn of humanity post the sealing of the 7 dragons by the first dragon slayer. This event, pivotal both locally and nationally, welcomes outsiders to the Iradium campus, attracting a plethora of visitors from within and beyond the Alpia Empire, resulting in substantial gatherings. Amidst this festive backdrop, Leon proposes to Rudd the idea of exploring the festival together, which he declines, citing busyness, prompting Leon to ponder if her company is being deliberately avoided. During the festive season, Leon finds Hanneth solitary and inquires about her solitude, to which Hanneth evasively responds, not wishing to disclose her thoughts. When questioned by Hanneth about her own presence and social connections, Leon jests about having a scheduled meeting. Hanneth reveals feeling abandoned by a friend, leaving her companionless for the festival, prompting laughter from Leon, who confesses to fabricating her appointment and also lacking companionship. Amidst their exchange, Linnea joins them, questioning their activity. Hanneth, visibly irked by Linnea's presence, queries her relationship with Rudd and dismisses the idea of casual conversation, hinting at underlying tension. The situation escalates towards conflict between Hanneth and Linnea, but Balak intervenes, advising discretion to avoid unwanted attention. When questioned about his scant attire, a student interrupts, referring to Balak as god muscles and noting his popularity, as evidenced by the autographs he's given to 8 students. During lunch, Hanneth expresses her perplexity regarding Rudd's actions and his acquisition of numerous potions. Linnea, feeling betrayed, laments Hanneth's behind-the-back discussions about Rudd, suggesting she reconsider their friendship. This accusation ignites another quarrel, with Hanneth rebuking Linnea for portraying herself as a victim. Amidst the escalating argument, Leon departs, seeking solitude to contemplate Rudd's situation, surmising that his actions are preparations for a dire future he foresees, hoping he won't have to bear the burden alone. Elsewhere, Rudd finalizes his research, prompting Fodroa to comment on the extensive duration spent for such knowledge acquisition. Fodroa reminds Rudd of his physical limitations, emphasizing that despite augmenting his strength with mana, his inherent physical frailty remains unchanged. Rudd acknowledges the finite resilience of the human body, recounting how in his previous life he endured until his body deteriorated, his joints becoming stiff and eyes frequently bloodshot. Yet he managed to fight valiantly. Fodroa challenges this, suggesting that such physical exertion, particularly when activating his heightened senses, must have had significant repercussions. Despite the potential adverse effects, Rudd's focus remains on combating the 7 dragons, formidable adversaries beyond mere nomenclature, embodying calamity itself. He resolves to exert all efforts to eradicate the dragons in a world now devoid of his brother. Subsequently, Rudd visits Gerald's office, surprising him with his presence. Known as Aslaughterer, Gerald is celebrated for his heroic feats, having vanquished numerous dragons and surviving encounters with sky dragons, only to retire due to injuries sustained in these battles, yet his legacy as a dragon slayer persists. Gerald, esteemed as a dragon slayer and principal of Iradium Academy, commands respect from many. He inquires about the purpose of Rudd's visit, who internally recalls Gerald's involvement with the 1,000-formed dragon's heart but outwardly claims he came to check on him. Gerald shifts the conversation to the festival, gauging Rudd's enjoyment. Rudd divulges his extensive interactions with Professor Damien, revealing that he has gained considerable insight, and mentions that the principal of the academy is Damien's maternal grandfather. This revelation startles Gerald, especially when Rudd discloses his awareness of the 1,000-formed dragon's heart implanted in Damien. Gerald reacts impulsively, attempting to assault Rudd by seizing his neck, but Rudd, anticipating such a response, manages to free himself. Gerald, bewildered, questions Rudd's motives for sharing this information, suggesting a readiness on Rudd's part for dire consequences. Rudd challenges Gerald's readiness to attack a student, questioning the appropriateness of such actions for the Academy's head. Gerald counters, feeling compelled to quell Rudd's incitements, even if it necessitates aggression. During the altercation, Rudd employs basic wind spirit magic to evade Gerald's forceful attacks, supplementing his defense with a healing potion. He acknowledges the formidable nature of Gerald's 4-winged assault, realizing the extent of the challenge he faces. As the confrontation escalates, Gerald, recognizing Rudd's preparedness for battle, launches another offensive. However, their skirmish is halted by Brick, who comments on Rudd's propensity to provoke. Rudd had confided in Brick about his strategy, clarifying that his true target was the 1,000-formed dragon, not Professor Damien. Brick has arrived to assist Rudd in his mission. Gerald expresses suspicion about Brick's actions, speculating on the existence of a surveillance network within the Academy, which Brick confirms. Brick discloses that Rudd has devised a significant plan, risking his grandson's life, which Gerald dismisses, concerned that destroying the dragon's heart would lead to Damien's slow and agonizing death, a scenario he vows to prevent. Rudd attempts to assure Gerald that their goal is to extract, not destroy, the heart, but Gerald responds with hostility. Brick intervenes, questioning Gerald's inclination to provoke with his words, while Rudd insists he was merely outlining his strategy. Brick decides to confront Gerald, allowing Rudd to proceed with retrieving the thousand-formed dragon's heart. As the conflict escalates, they engage in battle, and the situation intensifies with the deployment of the sky-piercing technique, rendering the surroundings chaotic. Amidst this, Rudd contemplates the unfolding events as aligning with his plans, determined to prevent the resurrection of the thousand-formed dragon. Rudd is startled to find Damien in a dire state, experiencing excruciating pain reminiscent of a skull fracture. Damien had previously confided in Rudd, suspecting the guild's influence in his torment following his coerced suicide attempt, yet his agony persisted. During this tense moment, Jeremy arrives, disdainfully labeling Damien as a contemptible outcast. Damien, in a fit of rage, seizes Jeremy by the throat, but Jeremy coldly suggests Damien end his life to avoid further suffering. Despite momentarily considering Jeremy's proposal, aligning with the Dragon Slayer's ethos that death is preferable to monstrosity, Damien recalls Rudd's plea for his survival. Jeremy, seizing the opportunity, lunges at Damien with a dagger, but Damien intercepts, grasping the weapon, triggering his monstrous transformation as the sky ominously darkens. Rudd perceives the catastrophic revival of the thousand-formed dragon, the Red Knight, as the situation deteriorates. Concurrently, Leon experiences an ominous sensation, noticing the sudden rainfall which, upon closer inspection, reveals itself as mana shards, indicative of a powerful entity's release. The chaotic and unique pattern of these shards eludes even Leon's understanding. As the sky darkens to an abyssal blackness, monstrous entities emerge from the mana-laden rain. One such creature lunges at a terrified family, but Leon intervenes, urging them to flee to survive. She then motivates a paralyzed student, reminding him of their identity as cadets of Irradium, calling on him and others to either retreat or stand and fight, but not to succumb to fear. Armed students rally, engaging the beast in combat. Leon suspects these creatures are manifestations of Rudd's dark summons, noting that, although their strikes deform the monsters, they failed to achieve a lethal blow. Leon commands the students to take cover and uses her mana to cease the creature's extraordinary regenerative ability. She declares the monsters have been permanently neutralized, turning to dust without the capacity for regeneration. Recognizing the chaos as the work of the thousand-formed dragon, she orders the students to safeguard civilians and assist the wounded, directing them towards Rudd's location. As they mobilize, a massive surge of mana materializes before Leon, from which a formidable beast emerges, prompting her to brace for combat. Meanwhile, Rudd laments the altered future, with Brick reporting an attempt to extract the dragon's heart. Despite the turmoil, Damien makes his presence known, eliminating the need for a search. Gerald is haunted by memories of his son's dying request to protect his offspring, now agonized by repeating past failures. Amidst the confrontation, Gerald's grandson launches an attack, which Rudd deflects, stepping into the fray. Gerald intervenes, adamant about not allowing his grandson's demise under his watch. Brick challenges his rationale, emphasizing the gravity of their predicament. Faced with the dire situation, Rudd questions his course of action, to which Brick coldly asserts that the consequences are self-inflicted, necessitating drastic measures against anyone tainted by the thousand-formed dragon's heart, even if it means facing death by familial hands. Rudd posits that his primary objective is to neutralize the dragon's heart, while Brick observes the advanced stage of his dragon assimilation, noting his draconic appearance and newfound regenerative capabilities, indicating imminent total consumption. Rudd recognizes the urgency, requesting his grandmaster to manage the situation as they must act swiftly, while Gerald is preoccupied, pinpointing this as a critical juncture. Despite the thousand-formed dragon's dominance over his mind, Damien's physical form, exhibiting dragon-like eyes, remains his own, with attack patterns Rudd is familiar with from previous sparring sessions. This knowledge bolsters Rudd's confidence in countering Damien effectively, given the dragon's incomplete control over the host body. Destruction of the heart would prevent any regenerative resurgence, leading to its ultimate eradication. Utilizing his mana, Rudd launches a series of attacks on the dragon, which initially seems inept in its responses. However, Rudd soon realizes the dragon's deliberate evasion, adapting to his assault strategy, thus diminishing the effectiveness of his attacks. Recognizing the escalating danger, Rudd is determined to conclude the battle swiftly as the dragon, regaining its mana, showcases tactics beyond Rudd's comprehension. Damien, utilizing an extreme sense, overpowers Rudd, who is unable to wield the heaven-defying sword, due to its excessive mana consumption in this high-stress scenario. Rudd sustains injuries during the assault, and although Fudro inquires about his condition, Rudd is visibly struggling. As the onslaught persists, with threats of complete annihilation, Rudd narrowly evades a lethal strike, reflecting on the dragon's rapidly enhancing agility. The adaptability exhibited by the thousand-formed dragon is astonishing, yet Rudd remains resilient. contemplating his counter-strategy amidst the toll of continuous high-level magic usage. Resolved to shift tactics, Rudd recalls the Thunderstrike technique imparted by Arthur, positioning himself to launch a decisive attack against his formidable adversary. Amidst the turmoil, Balak discerns a powerful surge, prompting Haneth to urge him to concentrate on the legion of adversaries they are confronting. Linnea expends her entire mana reserve to eliminate the foes, while Haneth employs her circular magic to incinerate these as the battle persists. A new creature emerges, engaging Balak, who recognizes that this beast is employing combat techniques distinctive to the Stero family, revealing a deeper connection and complexity to the unfolding conflict. The student continues to fight with the monsters, and he tells himself that he has a high chance of losing the fight, but he tells himself that he must not back down. As the monster is about to attack the student, one of the professors named Claire Mason immediately jumps in and defends the student. The student becomes surprised and Claire immediately uses her magical powers to defeat the monster, and she tells the student that he should watch the situation through without thinking. Claire asks Haneth and Linnea if they are okay, and they reply that they are fine, but Haneth points out that the monsters are increasing in number, but Claire tells them that they should not worry as she tells them boldly that she would take care of it. Another professor called Daniel interrupts Claire, and she becomes angry as she asks him what he is looking for. But he ignores her and asks the students if they are okay. Haneth asks Daniel how the other kids are doing. Then he tells her not to worry about them as the Imperial Black Wolf Knights are already in the school protecting the remaining students. As Daniel talks to Haneth, a man called Raven Adelph walks towards them and he tells them that the place they are in has weak demon dogs. He also asks them if they have not mistaken the demon dog for the name Dragon and also called the Black Wolf Knights for it. Daniel tells Raven that the demon dogs are hunting dogs and the dragon has a separate body, but Raven stops him and tells him that the Black Wolf Knights had not come to fight weaklings. Raven immediately yells at them that they should show him the name Dragon in the honor of the Imperial family. Then Linnea becomes angry as she asks him how he cares about an honor in an emergency. As Raven tries to go, Linnea stops him by standing on the way, but he yells at her that she should let him go, but Daniel interferes, and he tells Raven that Linnea is right as there is an emergency. Then Raven becomes calm and he tells Daniel and the other students that they should be prepared as he would come back to ask when the situation gets better. Raven tells his men to pass the order to kill the demon dogs on sight, and Daniel also tells his students that everyone who has depleted their mana should head to the evacuation center. Linnea tells Daniel that the explosion started at the North Tower, and Daniel replies that the North Tower is where the Academy Head's office is located, and on hearing this, Linnea becomes worried about Rudd. Meanwhile, Rudd is still fighting with Damien, who is possessed with the dragon's spirit, but as Damien tries to attack Rudd, he tells himself that he must not die, and he immediately uses his spear and a magical power to hit Damien, who sees that he cannot avoid the hit. Damien falls to the ground, and his grandfather goes to meet him and tells him that he would save him. Damien calls his grandfather, and as the grandfather kneels in front of Damien, he bites him and tells him that humans are stupid as they think they can hurt his immortal body. Damien eats his grandfather's arm, and he stands up as he looks at Rudd and tells him that he has failed. Rudd begins to think of what he can do next, but he tells himself that he has done everything he can. Damien rushes towards Rudd as he tells him that he is attacking him without a weapon. Then Rudd dodges the attacks and he tells himself that Damien's line of attack is simple, but overwhelming. Rudd adds that his injury is widening, and he is losing his strength. Then he tells himself that if he had the physical strength he desired, he would have been able to defeat Damien, but he has not recovered the strength he had in his past life. He also tells himself that if it was his brother would be able to do more than he is able to do, but he calls himself back and tells himself that he is making excuses as one attack is enough for him to defeat Damien. Damien tells Rudd that his body is superior to any move he is planning to make, but Rudd ignores him. And he remembers what he had been told, that he should always try to see into the future instead of relying on his eyes. Rudd realizes that he was not able to see his abilities before, but he tells himself that his strength does not rely on the speed of his movement, but in the pattern that he does it. Immediately, Rudd uses a skill and he notices that his muscles are put in much work, and he tells himself that it is as if his body has reached its limit. But he also adds that he should be able to defeat Damien as long as he is able to hold a sword. Rudd uses the sword to pierce through Damien as he tells himself that he can do it, and immediately Damien's body divides into two. And he also notices that the heavenly mana has depleted. Suddenly, Linnea and the other students and Daniel run to the North Tower, and Linnea tells them that Rudd would surely be in the tower. When they arrive there, they see Rudd and Damien. They immediately run to go and meet them. Linnea remembers that Rudd had told her that he is not scared of anything, but when she sees that he is too close with Damien, she immediately yells at him that he should move away. Rudd tells himself that he has to stab Damien, and when he raises his sword, Damien bites him on his arm, And he immediately stands up and he tells Rudd that humans are fools, and they are nothing but food to him, and he would make sure he destroys them all and eats them. He also adds that he would not rest until he finds his body, but he realizes that he is becoming weak. Then Rudd tells him that he should go in to eat his full arm, as he would gladly feed him, as he is so hungry for human flesh. The system asks Rudd if he was thinking about the stone of belief and faith, and Rudd replies that it is a unique constitution, and the only reason he and his brother had survived in Disol is because of the special blood of their lineage. Rudd recounts how they found out that their blood is toxic for dragons, as their parents were killed by a dragon who died not long after. Rudd stands up and he tells Damien that his existence is a curse to the dragon that has possessed him. Then Rudd begins to tell himself that he had made a reckless attempt and his mana has been drained. He adds that he would have been in a lot of trouble if his blood had not touched Damien, and he would have been dead. Rudd then tells himself that if he had not stopped himself, he would have killed Damien's main body, but as Rudd tries to end the dragon's life, Daniel yells at him to wait, but another man tells them not to distract him. Damien holds the sword as Rudd points it towards him, and he thanks Rudd for saving him, but he pulls the sword closer to his throat so as to kill the dragon's spirit, and while the others watch, Damien falls down and returns to his normal body. Rudd brings out a potion from his pocket, and he immediately tells Damien that he had told him that he should stay alive till the end if he is sorry for everything he had done. The system begins to explain to Rudd that the Thousand-Form Dragon's adaptation had forced Damien to circulate his mana pass, and with the dragon gone, Damien would die of mana maladjustment, but if Rudd can use the Heavenly Divine Sword, which can reroute the flow of mana. The system adds that Rudd should use the Heavenly Divine Sword to cut the wrong parts of Damien's veins off and use the potion for him to recover, so as to make the right veins flow. The people present try to stop Rudd, but the grandfather tells them to leave him alone as he is trying to save his grandson Damien. Rudd recounts how the disaster from a decade ago had returned because of a professor of Irradium. Suddenly, a man enters the room and he tells Rudd that he is going to be summoned soon. But instead of resting, he is flirting with Leon on the hospital bed. Leon becomes excited, and she tells the man that they just started, but Rudd tells him that his eyes are not working as he sees that Leon was just feeding him his food. The man tells Leon to leave because he wants to talk to Rudd, and as she leaves, she asks Rudd if he is really going to take a month of rest, but the man tells Rudd that he is a young boy, and Rudd immediately tells him that it is not what he is thinking about. The man sits down and he tells Rudd that he was contemplating on getting a new apprentice, because the old one was asleep for 3 days. Then Rudd asks him why he is telling him who has been his apprentice for only 4 weeks. Meanwhile, as Leon leaves the room, she tells herself that she is unable to help Rudd and she is not supposed to consider herself as Rudd's colleague as she is weak and scared, but she adds that she would try her best next time. The man tries to tell Rudd that he should make sure he takes good care of himself after the huge fight he had, and Rudd adds that the outcome of the fight was a good one as he was able to defeat one of the 7 dragons. The man commends Rudd for a job well done by patting his hair, and Rudd immediately asks him if he is sick. But the man protests as he asks him why he is behaving weird because he is being nice to him. Rudd reminds the man that he has never been nice to him before, as he had always treated him like he did not exist. The man immediately tells Rudd that he should not act like that in front of the royal family as he would be beheaded if he does that, and he also tells Rudd to be careful as Damien and Gerald had crossed the line already. 4 weeks later, in the carriage to the palace, Rudd begins to think of the fight he had with one of the Thousand-Form Dragons, and he tells himself that he had good luck on his side and he was saved by his blood. On getting to the palace, Rudd is welcomed by a guard who tells him that he would escort him to the throne room. But on the way to the throne room, Rudd asks Feldora if he has been in the palace before, and he replies that he had witnessed the entire empire with his eyes. Feldora tells Rudd that he wants to know why he was summoned to the palace, and Rudd replies that they might want to ask about the Thousand-Form Dragon or praise him for his victory. As he gets inside, Rudd sees some guild masters, and he begins to ask himself what the meeting is about. But as Rudd bows for the crown prince, Gleam Bernstein, Gleam tells Rudd to raise his head and asks him if he knows why he was summoned. Gleam begins by telling Rudd that they commend his effort for destroying the seal and suppressing the last Dragon King Keanu. He adds that it is not easy to defeat such a powerful dragon at such a young age, but Rudd immediately tells him that he did not do it alone as he had the help of the professors and cadets who helped him to block the dispersion of the Thousand-Form Dragon. Rudd tells Gleam that it was his duty, but Gleam becomes pleased as he realizes that Rudd is humble. Then he tells him that the royal family would be ashamed if they do not give him any reward for what he has done. Gleam immediately asks Rudd if there is anything he wishes for, and Rudd immediately tells him that he has something he wishes for, and that he wishes that the death penalties for Damien and Gerald be excused. The guild masters in the throne room become shocked. Then one of the guild masters yells at Rudd that death is not enough for the two people he mentioned, as they had facilitated the 1,000-form dragons come back. Gleam tells Rudd that what he had asked for is difficult, and he also tells him that no matter how he wishes for them not to be killed, the chances of it being lifted is slim. Rudd tells himself that he had known his method would not work, as the Empire is too chaotic for normal methods to work. Then he moves forward and he shows the people and the Crown Prince the seal of the Lightning Dragon. The Lightning Dragon Hanma is the only one of the 7 dragons who is considered to be a part of the dragon race without being a dragon. It is the only one that can polymorph and is stronger than the rest, because it is ruthless to retreat without hesitation when faced with adversity and plot a counterattack. Rudd tells himself that everyone in the throne room knows of the consequences of the seal he is holding, but some of the guild masters immediately take out their weapon, as one of them tells that they should kill Rudd immediately because of the seal he is holding. Gleam immediately tells the men to put their weapons down, and he asks Rudd what his intentions are. But Rudd replies him that he found the seal Irradium treasury, and he does not know how it got there, but he knows that it would be helpful for what he is trying to propose. Gleam tells Rudd that he is trying to use it to blackmail them, but Rudd tells them that he is not planning to blackmail them, as he would not bring it with him if he had planned to do so. Rudd gives one of the ladies present, as he tells them to see how fragile the seal is, and it can be broken anytime, and the seal would also backfire into a mess that they would not be able to fix. Rudd tells them that they should prepare in advance, as the seal would be broken soon. Then Gleam begins to think of what Rudd is talking about, and Rudd adds that he would make sure he kills the Lightning Dragon, as well as the Delusive Dragon, Scorching Dragon, and the Ice Dragon. Rudd mentions the names of the 7 dragons, and he tells Gleam the people present that he would kill them all, and after he would obliterate the rest of the dragons that remain. One of the men in the throne room begins to laugh at Rudd, as he tells him that he thinks he would be able to defeat the dragons without knowing how scary they are. But Rudd asks him immediately if he is scared. The man keeps quiet, and when Rudd tells him that he is as scared as he is definitely going to be eaten, the man becomes angry, and he yells at Rudd, and Gleam tells Rudd that he is too confident, as the great Banar of their empire was not able to kill all the dragons, and he sent them to the great northern mountains. Gleam proceeds to ask if Rudd can handle the Lightning Dragon, who is more ferocious as a student. Then Rudd replies that he cannot do it alone, and he needs 2 things in order to defeat the dragons. Rudd tells Gleam that he needs a field and the participation of everyone in the throne room except the Crown Prince. Rudd explains that the only way to defeat the Light Dragon, without incurring any casualties, is to fight with it in a safe space using space magic. Rudd asks who the expert of space magic is, and they tell him that the expert is Iris Hafle, who is the owner of the Crimson Flower. Rudd tells them that they would need to prepare for 1.5 years, and they do not need to bring an army to the fight, as that would increase the death rate. Another man asks Rudd if he is sure of what he is talking about, as it is not convincing enough. Then the man asks Rudd if he is sure that they would not be bodied immediately, and Rudd replies him that they would lose if the fight goes horribly wrong, and they would lose if the strongest people are unable to handle the fight. After listening to what Rudd has to say, Gleam begins to wonder what he is supposed to do, but he immediately tells himself that he has his answer, as he could see it on Rudd's face. Gleam stands up, and he announces that he has lifted the death penalties of Damien and Gerald, and he also appoints Rudd as the leader of the Lightning Dragon subjugation force. Later, Damien and his grandfather, Gerald, become released, and as they see each other, they hug each other. Then Gerald begins to beg Damien, as he tells him that his greed had caused him a lot. He also adds that they have to repent for those they have hurt, and also for Rudd, who had saved their lives. Rudd watches from afar as the two talk to themselves on how they would try to live a better life, because they've been given a second chance in life. Kenneth reads about how the Crown Prince had bestowed power on Rudd. Then she tells the others that it seems like the prince wants to restore the South, which was the long-cherished dream of the previous convention, by consolidating the strength on the continent. She also adds that the southern continent has been a forbidden land ever since the 1,000-form dragon incident 10 years back. Kenneth becomes angry, and when one of the students asks her why, she tells them that Rudd had taken everything into his hands, as he could have asked for their help. Linya tells Kenneth that if Rudd had asked her for help, she did not have the skills to fight with him, because she had already lost her strength after making one big fireball. Kenneth remembers what Leon had said to her when she asked her about Rudd, but she tells them that she is indebted to Studs, as he had helped her to find a cure to save her sister. The male student then tells Kenneth that she should not overthink it, as they are still very weak, and they need to learn from what has happened and grow stronger so that they would be able to help Rudd anytime he needs their help. Later, Jeremy takes the news, and as he reads it out loud, he tells Rudd that he did not know what had happened to make Damien and Gerald free from their death sentence. He asks Rudd if he had done anything, and he also tells him that he is not a hero. Then Rudd becomes angry, and he immediately attacks Jeremy. Rudd begins to hit Jeremy, and he yells at him as he asks him how he knows that Damien had the 1,000-form dragon heart, Jeremy laughs and he tells Rudd that he has good eyesight and it runs in their family, which makes them able to observe the flow of mana. Jeremy tells Rudd that Damien used his mana through a tangled mana path and his mama had formed around his neck instead of his heart. Jeremy adds that he did a background check because of his suspicions. Jeremy tells Rudd about Gerald's grandson, who is called the Predator for a reason, and Rudd asks him if it was the reason he had drove him to suicide by gaslighting him. Jeremy explains to Rudd that he almost died, then Rudd attacks him again, as he asks him if he wanted to play the hero in the situation. But Jeremy replies Rudd that his plan did not work and he did not want to be the hero as he only wanted the opportunity to see the life of the heroes. Jeremy tells Rudd that he would kill the dragons and become a legend after the wonderful adventure he is planning, and he would be satisfied if he sits next to him to be called a comrade of the hero. Rudd becomes angry, and he tells Jeremy that he did not have any choice, as the newspapers were published in that manner, so as to sell the papers. Then he also tells himself that he understands why Jeremy was acting weird to him in his previous life, because he was the hero's comrade. Rudd tells himself that Jeremy is ignorant of some things, and that is making him act like a crazy man. But as Rudd tells Jeremy to do what he pleases, Jeremy immediately holds Rudd's legs and he begs him to be the hero. Jeremy also reveals that he is from Atun, and Rudd remembers that Atun is the kingdom of trade that shares borders with some powerful kingdoms. Jeremy asks Rudd if he knows that Atun is a place where the crime rate is much, and Rudd tells himself that he definitely knows about that, as he had spent his mercenary days. Jeremy explains to Rudd that in Atun, he had found an old chest which contained a diary of his great-grandfather, who had written about the greatest hero who had ever lived, and the name of the hero was Vanar. Jeremy tells Rudd that the diary in the chest was a documentation of the first Dragon Slayer, and it had every last detail of the journey of Vanar. Rudd asks himself if the story of the hero who saved the world and the ministers who sang about it was true, and he also becomes shocked as he realizes that history is about to repeat itself as the grandson of the ministers is with him. He also wonders why the seal of the Lighting Dragon was hidden in Irradium, but Jeremy begins to beg Rudd that he should allow him to follow him on the lighting adventure, but Rudd yells at him to shut up. Rudd then tells himself that Jeremy is a crazy man who knows nothing about the seal stone, but he also wonders who could have put the seal stone in the Irradium treasury, as the location of the stone was not mentioned in any of the records. Rudd asks Jeremy if the diary he had seen had any details about the Lighting Dragon and where it was kept, and Jeremy replies that he does not think it was recorded in the diary, because such things were too huge for a mini-steal to witness. Jeremy tells Rudd that he can give him the keys to his abandoned apartment so as to go and check the diary as long as he pronounces him as the hero's comrade. But Rudd becomes very angry and he tells Jeremy that he had told him that he is not interested in being a hero. Rudd tells Jeremy that he would allow him to join the team because his eyes would help him in defeating the dragon. But he also warns Jeremy not to tell anyone about him being in the army. The following day, Rudd goes to see his friend, and he tells him that the dragons were sealed by Vanar and not defeated completely, but they change the topic and Rudd tells the man of how he plans to spend his years after his course. Then he also tells the man that he wants to learn magic, and before going to learn magic, he has to go and check something at a basement in Atun. Meanwhile, at the Duville residence, someone sneaks in and goes to the old chest, but he tells himself that everything is nothing but trash. 6 months later, Hinith stays in the academy's library and she sneezes, but one of the male students meets her, and he asks her why she is studying hard instead of going home. But she asks the student why he is interested. The student gives her a tea he's holding and tells her to take it as it would relieve her of her sickness, and she would feel better, but she ignores him by telling him to take the tea away. The student takes the tea away, sad, but Hinith focuses on her studying, as she tells herself that her research is going smoothly, and if she follows Rudd's instructions, she would be able to find the cure of the disease. Hinith recounts how Rudd had told her that he has a lot to do in the celebration. Then she also wonders why Rudd had many potions with him, as it looked as if he had planned the fight he had with the 1,000-formed dragon. Rudd suddenly shows up and scares Hinith, who becomes startled as she has not seen him there, but she immediately comports herself and yells at him as she asks him if the tea he is holding is for her. Rudd replies to her that it is for him, and he tells her to study well, but when he leaves, she remembers what she had discussed with Silenus and the other students after the fight with the 1,000-formed dragon. She immediately tells herself that she needs to study hard so that they would all be able to help Rudd in the future. Later, Rudd walks in the snowy street, and as he tells himself that it is cold, Feldora asks him why he is still feeling cold after wearing the jacket the royal family had sent to him. While Rudd talked to Feldora, the snowman beside him suddenly made a sound, and when the person in it came out, he realized that it was Leon. He yells at Leon for scaring him, and he also scolds her that she would catch a cold by staying outside, without wearing anything warm, but Leon tells him that she had been waiting all day as she did not know what time he would leave. Rudd tells her of how she was in his past life, and he tells her that she should be friendly with other people when he leaves. As they walk down the street, Leon hugs Rudd and tells her that she would miss him. But he tells her that she should go home, and when she leaves, he begins to blame himself for being weak in his past life, which made a lot of people die, and he tells himself that if the geniuses had not died and left him as a sole survivor, the cycle would not restart again. Carriage from school, and finally arrived at Ibris after a lengthy journey. The city bustled in the center of the continent, but its outskirts decayed in the dirt. Later, the Feldro confronted Rudd, urging him to admit that he was lost despite having a map. Rudd argued that he had a good sense of direction, but the Feldro recounted Rudd's past misadventures, wandering in a forest for a week, getting lost on a snowy mountain, and mistaking a volcano dragon's mouth for a cave. The Feldro called Rudd stupid, and Rudd tried to justify himself. Despite the Feldro's concerns about reaching their destination, Rudd assured him not to worry as he had found a guide. Unbeknownst to them, a bandit-looking person silently trailed behind Rudd. The man warned Rudd that he had to pay a toll tax in the area, using threats to intimidate him. Instead of succumbing to the pressure, Rudd swiftly positioned himself in front of the man and inquired about the Duville residence. Unfazed, Rudd remained oblivious to the man's attempt to intimidate him through his identity. Growing frustrated with Rudd's lack of recognition, the man revealed himself as Volvic, the executioner from the Mastiff Mercenary Corps, brandishing a massive axe. Despite the menacing display, Rudd nonchalantly kicked the axe aside and recollected his knowledge of the Mastiff Mercenary Corps. Volvic found himself unable to move his large axe, and it dawned on him that he had underestimated Rudd. Rudd, now recalling his indebtedness to the Mastiff Mercenary Corps, identified himself as a veteran. Volvic, realizing his mistake, understood that he had confronted the wrong person. Changing his tone, Rudd referred to Volvic as his junior and requested directions. Shortly after, Volvic led Rudd to the Duville residence, and Rudd realized he had come full circle in the area. As Volvic ran away, the Feldro inquired about the mercenary corps mentioned. Rudd then recounted how they had encountered them during his time as a mercenary before arriving in Aratium. He was curious about the corps' leader. He opened the residence's gate without needing a key and swung the main door wide open. With sword in hand, Rudd ventured into the basement and stumbled upon the lifeless body of an elf-like person. Pondering if the woman was an elf, he observed that he didn't need a key to enter. The Feldro insisted that the woman was still alive, on the verge of becoming a corpse, and mentioned the prevalence of enslavement of other races in Ibris. Witnessing the woman's decaying leg, Rudd recognized that it was too late to help lift the curse. The Feldro attributed it to the dark magic of an evil sorcerer. Just then, a girl lunged at Rudd with a knife, but our protagonist skillfully blocked the attack with his mana shield. Rudd was taken aback to discover that the assailant was a young child. The girl passionately warned him not to harm her mother and unleashed spirit magic in an attempt to attack Rudd. However, the magic backfired, causing an explosion. Confused, the girl realized her spirit wasn't responding as expected, and she couldn't understand why. Out cautioned that going against their superior would have consequences. The Feldro chimed in, revealing that the elf child shared the same curse. Since he noticed the girl moving around despite the pain, Rudd understood that she could endure it. He unsheathed his sword, creating the impression that he might harm her. In response, the girl screamed, calling out for her mother. Irritated by the noise, Rudd instructed her to be quiet, claiming his ears hurt. He then directed his sword towards the girl's leg and activated something. To her surprise, the girl felt her leg healing, and the slave restraint was removed. Rudd engaged in a heated argument with the Feldro about using his sword to reverse a curse. Curious, the girl inquired if Rudd owned the house and if he intended to sell her. Rudd questioned her abilities and clarified that he didn't own the house, urging her to leave as he searched for a book. The Feldro teased Rudd about acting distant after helping the child. As the girl looked around, she considered her mother. Noticing the book Rudd sought, she asked if it was the one she held. Rudd cautioned her to stop as he observed her actions. Realizing how his sword could reverse the curse, the girl rushed toward the fireplace. She pleaded with Rudd to save her mother before the book turned to ashes. Chapter 55, Rudd explained that curses were a type of mana that circulates around the body, gradually damaging the heart. He emphasized that no potions or magic could heal someone afflicted by a curse. Regardless of his efforts, Rudd made it clear that the girl's mother was destined to die. The girl, refusing to believe him, pleaded for him to lift her mother's curse just like he did with hers. Growing annoyed, Rudd contemplated smacking the girl, but Feldro reminded him not to. Frustrated, Rudd wanted the girl to face the harsh reality, especially since she was young and would soon be living alone. Taking the book away from her, Rudd wondered how he could be threatened. He reiterated that her mother was beyond saving and cautioned her against threatening someone who had just saved her. He urged her to find a way to survive independently. In tears, the girl offered herself as Rudd's servant if he would save her mother. Rudd wondered if all his troubles would vanish by simply getting on his knees and begging. Dismissing her as a nobody, he argued that enslaving her would be pointless since she would be of no use. Rudd reminded her once again that she would live alone, and her mother's death was imminent. He advised her to use the time to become stronger instead of crying. Despite her refusal, stating she couldn't use a sword and her magic was weak, the girl considered herself a weak child even after 100 years of life. She believed Rudd, as a strong adult, couldn't sympathize with someone like her. Suddenly, Rudd saw his younger self in her. Despite the girl's words, Rudd chose to ignore her and instructed her to stay where she was for the rest of her life. Leaving the basement, Rudd left the girl sobbing on the ground, unable to say anything more. Upstairs, Rudd quietly perused the book he had just acquired. The Feldro attempted to say something, but Rudd halted him from speaking further. He had no interest in the girl. His sole focus was on reading the diary. In the diary, the author identified himself as a minstrel who conveyed adventures through plays, poems, and music. He experienced various human characters and the passage of time, feeling a duty to record them. The girl silently knelt in front of him without uttering a word as Rudd continued reading. The author expressed a desire to tell the story, even if it disrupted the natural flow. He hoped his experiences were worthy of being documented and passed down through generations. At one point, the author traveled with some merchants and faced a dragon attack. They were saved by a man named Vanar, whom the author decided to follow. Vanar earned the nickname Dragon Slayer due to his fearlessness and possessed skills in swordsmanship, magic, spirit arts, and the charisma and courage of a leader. Only a select few were considered comrades by Vanar, with just 6 individuals being particularly close. Excluding 2 people named Bellion and Elaine, there were 4 who were strong enough to fight alongside Vanar: Dina, Killian, Reynold, and Arcania. Rudd felt surprised. The name Arcania was unfamiliar to him, even though he recognized the other names in the diary. As he turned the pages, seeking more details about her, he discovered that the author referred to everyone as insane. Each person had their unique brand of craziness, with Arcania standing out as the most exceptional, despite keeping her true intentions hidden. Another entry mentioned Reynold, the future king, liberating a city after the group sealed the lightning dragon. 2 more dragons remained, and a battlefield was chosen. Exhausted from battling the remaining dragons, everyone except Vanar and Arcania grew weary. The day of the final showdown arrived, and only a select few accompanied Vanar. Despite their weariness, the heroes returned victorious. However, the author couldn't comprehend why Vanar chose to seal the dragons instead of defeating them, given his strength. Rudd continued reading, finding the author questioning why no one else had challenged Vanar's decision. The heroes group eventually disbanded, with each person going their separate ways to pursue personal goals. The author detailed the subsequent actions of everyone except for Arcania, Elaine, and Bellion. On a specific day and time, Vanar sought out the author. Diary concluded with no useful information for Rudd. He questioned Feldro about the author Alan Duville, the 7 dragons, and the unnamed white dragon, but Feldro remained silent. Rudd remembered how Feldro witnessed the Empire's construction and the palace's completion. He speculated that Feldro had a contract with Vanar 700 years ago, and met him in the sacred palace of the dragon who caused Rudd's regression. Rudd understood that an ancient pact jeopardized everyone's existence at that time, but Feldro couldn't divulge any details. Frustrated, Rudd wanted to know what transpired 700 years ago, but Feldro refused to answer. As Rudd expressed his anger at Feldro's silence, the girl called him and requested one more favor. Rudd clarified that he wouldn't help with her mother, and the girl agreed. With tears in her eyes, she asked Rudd to relocate her mother to a place where she could see the forest. The scene revealed the girl's mother surrounded by small particles of light. Chapter 56. Despite the abolition of slavery long ago, fairy species like this mother and daughter faced a dark reality. Their captivating features and enchanting voices made them prime targets for illegal slavery. Living secluded deep in the forest, these fairies had minimal interactions with other species and could only reach adulthood after reaching the age of 150. This particular fairy species originated from the spirit world, which they left behind to settle in this realm. Upon their death in this world, both their bodies and souls vanished without a trace, returning to the spirit world. In a poignant moment, Renee, the young fairy, received comfort from her dying mother, who promised to always be by her side. With those words, the mother transformed into nothingness. The girl then felt remorse for not growing into an adult faster. Her mother had protected her throughout her life, but the girl couldn't reciprocate in the same way, determined by her mother's last words. She decided to stop crying. In Rudd's recollection from a past life, the fairy species had chosen to escape and remain silent instead of battling the dragons, but eventually perished. Rudd harbored a dislike for their species. Despite this, he offered the girl one final piece of advice for surviving on her own. He gently patted her head and advised her to stop whining and waiting for someone's help. He emphasized that there are moments to overcome challenges after letting out one's emotions. Silently, the girl clutched her tattered clothes and followed Rudd. The girl then referred to Rudd as uncles and introduced herself as Renee from the Nastia tribe. She explained that she needed a place to stay because she was still being targeted and had nowhere else to go. Rudd understood that hunters wouldn't easily give up on runaway slaves and considered where the girl could find safety. Remembering how Renee had used a magic spell against him, Rudd asked her to teach him some magic. Renee thought it was impossible since she was only a second circle mage, and Rudd already seemed strong without magic. Rudd insisted that having more skills would be beneficial and argued that a few days wouldn't be enough for him to learn the basics. In return, he promised to find a place for Renee to stay. Rudd made it clear that he was not actually an uncle, as he was only 17 years old. Renee looked at him with a relieved expression and wondered what to call him. Rudd suggested she simply use his name, but in the end, Renee decided to call him Uncle Rudd. The following day, Renee started her one-on-one magic class with Rudd. She arrogantly reminded her student to be respectful since she was the teacher. Rudd wondered if Renee was genuinely fine after just one night or if she was merely putting on a facade. Renee then described magic as akin to painting. Instead of paint, one used the nature and attributes of mana to craft a spell. After completing a spell, it could be modified as many times as desired. Renee explained that as the arrangement of spells became more complex, modifications became challenging. But 8-circle magicians could handle it with ease. Curious about Rudd's proficiency, Renee inquired about how many mana rings he possessed. To her surprise, Rudd confessed he had none, leaving Renee puzzled. He then revealed his mana source, and Renee quickly realized its origin from the first hero. Despite this, Rudd urged her to continue with the lesson. Observing that Rudd had no issues controlling his mana, Renee decided to move on to practical exercises directly. She went on to explain the 3 key elements of magic: mana, technique, and casting. Additionally, she touched on mana stabilization, rearrangement, computation, and materialization. Rudd decided to give it a try and effortlessly brought something into existence, leaving Renee impressed. Despite being a novice, Renee started praising Rudd. However, Rudd thought the manifestation was slow. This confused Renee, who exclaimed that even a skilled mage would find it challenging to materialize a magic spell in 2 seconds. Rudd mentioned knowing people who didn't need to cast at all. Renee warned him not to overestimate his abilities, as what Rudd claimed could be done was on the level of the White Flame Empress. Feeling discouraged, Rudd suddenly wanted to quit learning magic. Renee insisted that Rudd had a talent for it, but Rudd argued that throwing sword ki was faster. Undeterred, Renee tried hard to convince Rudd to continue learning magic and left to find more books in the house. While Rudd observed Rene's efforts, Feldra explained that Renee didn't have a choice as she wanted to stay alive. Feldra then offered a helping hand, emphasizing that magic is based on imagination. Although Rudd initially believed Feldra could only communicate through speech in his head, Feldra surprised him by creating magic without chanting. Feldra clarified that it was possible through casting aided by imagination, taking charge of computation and imagery to make mana control easier for Rudd. Impressed by their ability to share imagination, Rudd wondered if Feldra assisted him with magic because he couldn't answer his questions the other day. Feldra denied this and Rudd was content, appreciating the usefulness of his new battle-ready magic. Just then, Renee returned with some books and caught Rudd casually materializing his magic spell. Shocked, Renee called him reckless, warning that it could turn dangerous if he lost control. Right after her caution, Rudd realized he had messed up. Teacher Renee, frustrated with her student, witnessed the magic spell running wild and exploding. Chapter 57. 2 weeks later, at the mansion of millionaire Gillian, a man named Balkan Distier discovered that Rudd had taken Ren after weeks of spying. Balkan, the leader of the Mastiff Mercenary Corps, wore a disgusted expression. Gillian, adorned with expensive rings, expressed his displeasure at someone interfering with his precious treasures. He also sought Ciarl, Ren's mother. Gillian instructed Balkan to take action, fueled by his disdain for Rudd, who owed something significant. Balkan's anger flared at the mention of Rudd's name. A man named Hyman, a dark wizard, intervened. He claimed not to care about Balkan's relationship with Rudd, and reminded him that Rudd was a warrior recognized by the imperial family. Balkan dismissed Hyman's words, stepping on a newspaper and labeling Rudd as a mentally deranged murderer. Balkan left, ignoring Hyman's attempts to make him listen. Gillian questioned Rudd's strength, but Hyman dismissed the rumors as exaggerations. He assured Gillian that everything was prepared before Balkan's return. At the same time, in the Duville residence, Rudd was still practicing magic, finding it increasingly easy to control. Even though it was a first circle magic, combining it multiple times proved to be quite useful. As he pondered how to advance his magical abilities, Renee emerged from the house, curious about Rudd's next target for destruction. She complained about having to clean every day and warned him not to ruin the new clothes she had just bought. Suddenly, Rudd noticed magical spells forming behind Renee. He urgently told her to duck, and Renee realized something was behind her. The area erupted with magical spells, leaving small craters. Balkan scolded Hyman for using such powerful magic and cautioned against reckless actions. One of Balkan's men praised Hyman's magic, assuming they wouldn't find any corpses. Balkan worried about Gillian's reaction if he learned about the elf girl's death. Just then, he heard a sound. It was Renee, protected by Rudd's sword from the magical attack. She remembered it as the sword that could reverse curses. Noticing she was unharmed, she wondered if the sword also absorbed the magic from the attack. Concerned for Rudd, Balkan approached her and demanded to know the whereabouts of her mother. Rain tried to resist, but Balkan started slapping her, demanding answers. He asked again where her mother had gone, and Renee claimed she had already returned to the forest. Annoyed, Balkan slammed Renee to the ground, then inquired about Rudd's whereabouts, questioning whether he had perished in the explosion. Thinking that Rudd was no longer a threat, our protagonist emerged behind him, causing a small explosion. Balkan couldn't believe that Rudd survived, accusing him of being a traitor. Despite Reen's concern, Rudd urged her not to come out. Feldro suggested that the same flesh-eating curse that affected the dead elf had struck Rudd, wondering if he needed a potion. Rudd insisted he was fine due to his overlapping artifacts. He then scorned Balkan and his men as dogs and assholes with no roots for intruding. Renee tried to alert Rudd about his sword, but he was already armed. Balkan's men became enraged after getting ridiculed, but suddenly they exploded. Balkan, surprised, speculated if it was explosion magic. Emerging from the smoke, Rudd held his sparking sword, soaked in blood. More mercenaries attacked Rudd and another explosion occurred. Balkan laughed, asserting that the rumors about Rudd being strong were false since he stood no chance against his men. However, instead of Rudd, Balkan saw his men charred on the ground. He soon noticed magic missiles flying around, causing panic among the mercenaries. Despite everyone running around, numerous magic missiles chased them, and Balkan wondered why there were so many. He also noticed the perfect control, making the trajectories unpredictable. Balkan told his men to open their eyes, but Rudd approached from behind, stating that Balkan should be the one to open his eyes. After a long time without seeing each other, Rudd greeted Balkan and pointed his sword at Balkan's neck. The two old comrades fell silent amidst the fallen mercenaries. Renee was astonished that Rudd had managed to defeat all of them single-handedly. Witnessing his overwhelming strength, she couldn't help but wonder about Rudd's true identity. Her attention was drawn to the bloody sword in his hand, which seemed to spark each time it touched blood. Observing the explosive reaction, Renee pondered how many swords Rudd possessed, considering he already had the curse nullification sword. Meanwhile, Rudd regretted choosing to make them explode instead of simply taking them down with slashes, which was cleaner. He argued that he couldn't grasp Balkan's hostility toward him, especially since he was the one who had been blindsided 5 years ago. Balkan was incredulous at what he heard, calling Rudd ungrateful after having treated him like a son. He couldn't fathom that Rudd had returned to Ibris after previously eliminating half of the mercenary corps members. Rudd was puzzled by Balkan's accusations, wondering what he was talking about. Balkan couldn't believe that Rudd had killed his colleagues just because they had committed some minor wrongs and had damaged his good-looking face. Rudd was stunned as he realized that he was not the one who had killed the others, nor had he been treated like a son by Balkan. Rudd used to be known as the Nameless Refuge Kid, and the mercenary corps he joined consisted of weak individuals engaged in street fighting and doing a lot of perverted things. After losing their parents, Rudd and his brother wandered aimlessly and eventually arrived in Ibris. While Rudd's brother was strong and earned respect within the corps, Rudd was often seen as a burden by others. His brother, favored by Balkan, would frequently receive missions. One day, when Rudd's brother was away on a mission, he was brutally attacked by other corps members. Witnessing this, Rudd's brother intervened, killing half of the mercenary corps and leaving a scar on Balkan's face. Aesir orchestrated these events, not Rudd. When questioned by Rudd about going too far, Aesir assured him it was deserved and claimed to act for Rudd's sake. Subsequently, a warrant for Aesir's arrest was issued, leading him to entrust Rudd to a certain man. While it seemed like the best choice at the time, it left Rudd to live alone. Many years passed before he learned about his brother's whereabouts. Observing Balkan's intense animosity towards him, Rudd realized that everything his brother had done in his past life now fell on his shoulders. Sighing at the messed up situation, he resorted to using his bloodsword on Balkan, hurling the mercenary forward. Despite Balkan attempting to talk things through, Rudd silenced him, thrusting the sword perilously close to Balkan's sensitive area. It was shocking for Rudd to grasp that the mastiff mercenaries were still involved in nefarious activities, especially with children. When Balkan inquired about Rudd's statement, our protagonist chose to keep silent, considering Balkan's impending demise. The scene then unfolded into a massive explosion. Rudd emerged from the smoke and Renee rushed towards him. However, Rudd insisted that she should hide. Despite her plea for him to escape, Renee revealed that Balkan was Gillian's underling and detailed how Gillian had tormented her and her mother. She mentioned the presence of a dark wizard and emphasized that Rudd was the target. In a surprising move, Rudd lifted Renee like a pet cat and carried her on his shoulders, almost like a big brother or even a father. Rudd then asked Renee to guide the way. Despite Renee's scolding, Rudd was determined to move quickly. Grateful for Renee's magic teachings, he felt the need to repay her kindness and stand against oppression. Meanwhile, at Gillian's mansion, the overweight millionaire and Hyman observed everything that unfolded through a crystal ball. They witnessed Balkan, his hips missing due to the blood source explosion. Gillian, filled with fear, trembled and collapsed, shocked by the demise of a powerful figure like Balkan. Hyman confirmed that Rudd was en route to them, prompting Gillian to flee desperately. He instructed Hyman to gather all elven slaves and secure them. Gillian, reminding Hyman of the support he provided when Hyman was expelled from the Magic Kingdom, ordered him to eliminate Rudd without harming his precious treasure. Like the need for funding for his research, Hyman had no choice but to comply with Gillian's orders. Gillian assured him not to worry, hinting at a secret weapon they possessed. Gillian recalled that they had a certain thing and grinned. He praised Hyman's research as a masterpiece, revealing an elf-like man with horns behind bars as part of their plans. Outside, a group of men had intercepted an intruder. The surroundings fell silent and numerous men were sprawled on the ground. Rudd questioned if they were at the right place, and Renee confirmed it was Gillian's mansion. Observing the abundance of guards, Rudd speculated that Gillian was swimming in wealth. Out of nowhere, Renee expressed concern about Rudd's well-being. Rudd inquired why she was asking, and Renee pointed out that despite being enemies, the people Rudd was fighting were still human beings. Rudd reminded her that he had warned them but was attacked. Suddenly, more men rushed out of the mansion, and Rudd claimed they were still attempting to attack him. However, they soon realized something was amiss. The men weren't attackers but individuals fleeing from something. Abruptly, numerous monsters emerged from the mansion, causing Ren's eyes to widen in recognition. Initially, she thought they were mana beasts, but she soon realized her mistake as these creatures looked vastly different from the ones she knew. Upon scanning them, Rudd identified the monsters as chimeras, created by combining various creatures using magic. He remembered that this was an illegal activity, observing these chimeras devouring the mansion's guards. He questioned why they had unleashed creatures unable to distinguish between friends and foes. The guards were defenseless against the onslaught. Rudd tightened his grip on his sword and instructed Reen to find a hiding spot. He spotted another chimera emerging from the mansion, resembling a person. The other chimeras went silent. It surprised Rudd that they replicated a Dracotor, a creature with a human upper body and a dragon lower body. Quickly, Rudd figured out which parts were used to create the Raconteur. All of a sudden, Renee tried to call the Dracotor named Hurt. Rudd stopped her and told her to hide because it was dangerous. He blocked an attack to keep them safe. Ren insisted that she knew the person. He was someone from her past, the guardian of their tribe, Hurt and Astia. He mentioned sensing a living elf as part of the Chimera. After a long time, Feldra appeared and mentioned that while a tribe's guardian is powerful, their memory and consciousness might be long gone. Rudd then grabbed Renee and swiftly dodged an unexpected attack. He could tell that the Dracotor was on a different level compared to other chimeras. It suddenly attacked with a spear, but Rudd quickly erected a barrier to block its strike. Instead of getting scared, Rudd was excited to try a technique he used in his past life. He casually dodged all the Dracotor's attacks. His techniques were different from the well-known techniques everyone was familiar with. They were ones he had developed while fighting on the battlefield. A misty blur enveloped the edges of Rudd's sword all of a sudden, and he named the move Swallow. His moves resembled a swarm of birds swooping down on his foe from various angles, like a group. Seizing the opportunity, Rudd employed a blink skill to swiftly close in and strike the Dracotor from the rear. Realizing it couldn't dodge, the Dracotor countered by twirling its spear. Rudd quickly distanced himself and thrust his sword into the ground. Ice began to spread, and after a short delay, an ice-based attack called Clearing Snow was triggered on the Dracotor. The Dracotor groaned in pain and took a step back. He saw that his wounds weren't too bad, so he decided to continue fighting. Without warning, he lunged at Rudd, who was trying to remember the name of another technique. Rudd remembered the name just in time and unleashed a move called Wolf. It was like a fierce wolf's bite, aimed at the Dracotor. Feldra was amazed at how well Rudd performed his techniques, but thought Rudd's names for them weren't great. Rudd explained that he came up with those names when he was younger. While Rudd was attacking again, he explained that techniques should have interesting and easy-to-say names. Suddenly, a wand appeared in the scene, and Rudd stopped in his tracks to dodge the magic attack. Looking up, he discovered the dark wizard Hyman casting a massive dark magic spell. Scared, Renee recognized him. Feldra offered some help, but Rudd refused. He stored his sword and unsheathed another one, claiming that he was far out of Hyman's league. He then recalled the 3 elements of magic as he analyzed Hyman's magic spell. Concerning mana, he pulled out as much as he could, and Rudd swung his sword. A sword slash condensed with mana flew toward Hyman and broke the magic spell he was constructing. Hyman wondered if it was a dispelling spell. Nevertheless, he quickly understood that his magic wasn't dispelled. It was actually being consumed. Despite appearing worried about Rudd's peculiar sword, Hyman remained calm and attempted to cast another magic spell. Rudd, preparing to hurl his sword, questioned Hyman's actions. Urging Hyman to take cover, he tossed his sword at the wizard as if he were downing a bird. Damn, Hyman managed to create a magic circle before falling. He hit the ground and realized Rudd was truly dangerous, forcing him to use healing magic and flying magic in just one strike. Worse for Hyman, he was out of magic power and suffered a significant injury. The backlash of magic made Hyman vomit on the spot. Rudd coldly approached him and mocked. How did you become a wizard with 6 magic circles? You're even weaker than a 6-year-old kid. Hyman was visibly terrified as Rudd handled his magic in an instant. Even if he was the next hero, it was still incomprehensible. He felt lucky to have enough magic power for one instant teleportation and knew he needed to escape immediately. Rudd suddenly said, "Going somewhere," and stomped on Hyman's hand, causing him to scream in agony. In Hyman's panic, Rudd swung his sword, intending to deal with him swiftly. From a distance, Renee was hiding behind a tree, watching the battle when Herté, lying on the ground, suddenly stirred. She could only turn pale and say, "No," then screamed Uncle Hurt, while the tall figure had already blocked in front of Hyman. He realized this was a great opportunity to escape. With a contemptuous face, Hyman said, "It's over, you have failed," and then pushed Hurt forward to take Rudd's strike. At the moment Herté was pierced by Rudd's strike, Hyman had already recited a spell and used teleportation magic to escape. Rudd clenched his teeth in anger. The core of Herté was destroyed, and he would not live much longer. Renee ran towards him, crying and calling out Hurt's name in despair. Rudd quickly grabbed the sobbing girl and warned, "Stay back. It might still be dangerous." Ray and Rudd stood silently looking at Herté's body. If he were alive, he would have been very strong. Not everyone is honored as the guardian of a tribe. I can't believe he was easily captured by a mere dark wizard, Rudd thought to himself. Renee cried helplessly, remembering the beautiful memories of the past. The girl asked Rudd, "Where did those people go?" "Not far. They are badly injured," Rudd replied. Renee clenched her fists. "Can you chase after them?" Rudd affirmed with a grim face and then opened a dark space. "Will you come with me?" he asked Renee. "Of course. My mother might be disappointed in me." Renee stepped forward and said with a face full of hatred, "But I still want revenge." At Gillian's mansion, everything was in chaos. Gillian was screaming at his subordinates, "Get out, go outside and protect the mansion now. You irresponsible fools. Don't let a single sword get into the cellar. Where is Hyman? Why hasn't he arrived yet?" From a magic circle floating in the air, Hyman fell to the ground painfully right in front of Gillian. Gillian panicked. "Hyman, what in the world is happening to you?" "Shut up," Hyman shouted with a face full of injuries. He thought, "I need to run away now." "Damn, what the hell is that damn kid?" Gillian interrogated him. "Do you want to run away? Do you want to abandon me and my treasure? Do you know how much I have spent on you?" While Hyman was still trying to find a way to escape in panic. Catalysts, materials, and all necessary support for the research to produce Chimera. Gillian was still trying to persuade Hyman. Hyman retorted, "Why are you still talking about research when we are about to perish?" He yelled angrily and scolded Gillian. "I'm in this situation because of you, you worthless dog." He continued to berate Gillian, who was stunned. "Is your head so full of fat that you can't think anymore? Give me the key to the cage now. I'm out of magic power. We need to ride horses." Before he could finish, a blue light struck Hyman on the head, making him scream. "Where do you think you're going?" Rudd and Renee had just stepped out from the dark space at the right moment. Fildrora appeared and asked, "What sword is that?" "It has cleared the entire space," Rudd replied. "Philia, the sword of separation. This sword can cut through space where Leon used it in the past. It consumes a lot of magic power, so I didn't want to use it." Rudd helped Reen down while Gillian screamed, "Monster. Someone save me," and then panically ran away. He rushed to hug an elf who was tied up and shouted, "Save me! Save me now! You're useless." Before he could finish, he was bound by ropes and fell with a thud to the ground. Rudd approached the trembling old man and said, "Hey, I have a few questions for you. I'll finish this soon because there's another guy waiting for his turn." Rudd kicked Hyman, who was lying flat on the ground. "The elf you used to create the chimera seems very strong. There's no way you could control him by yourselves. Where did you get it?" Gillian, lying flat on the ground with tears streaming down his face, trembled and replied, "The Ivory's black market. I traded with people wearing masks like dragon heads and white cloaks." Rudd repeated this information to himself, dragon masks and white cloaks. Could it be the Church of the Dragon? It's a bizarre organization fantasizing about dragons ruling the world. If they managed to kill the Nasias and capture the tribe's guardian, then everything would make sense, Rudd thought. Gillian, in fear, pleaded, "I've told you everything I know. My treasure, not just that, slave. I'll let you do whatever you want with them. Some of them are already damaged, but there are still some clean ones." Dudley went to untie the elves, who looked at the old man with eyes full of hatred. He continued to say, "You can take all the money if you want, please." Rudd just remained silent. Then he laughed. "What the hell? Really? But I'm not sure the treasures behind you feel the same way." Numerous hands, filled with vengeance, rushed towards the old man under his terrified gaze. Rudd leisurely said, "Try convincing them." Screams of agony rose. Gillian was covered in blood. He tried to whisper, save me, please do business, save me, Renee." Drain stepped into the pool of blood to stand before him with a face full of hatred and a sharp knife in hand. Gillian was still babbling lies. "TRL, my love, CRL would surely not want to see you like this." Rin spoke harshly. "You know, my mother protected you with all her love." She threw the knife down to the ground right in front of Gillian and continued, "I'm sure my mother would not want to see me like this." The girl squatted down in front of the old man. "So, this is what I'm going to do. I will start by drilling a small hole in your body and slowly introduce air into it." She continued with an emotionless face. "The air will gradually travel through your bloodstream, into your eyes, organs, and finally, your brain." She created a magic circle. Air began to fill the old man's bloodstream. "Perhaps your soul will never rest in peace, as we will curse you for the hundreds of years we might live." Renee spoke, while turning away as Gillian screamed in pain. She flashed a bright smile. "No less cruel. Unfair, isn't it? After all, you are an oppressor." Rudd and Feldro both remained silent, looking on with pity. Rudd appeared uneasy. Feldro complained, "You should teach the girl something good, Rudd Donatos." Abel, leaning on his hand in annoyance, said, "Such a nuisance." Gillian's body had been carried away. One a sick slave abuser, the other a dark wizard creating illegal chimera experiments. The instigators of this incident deserve to be executed. Abel complained with a headache to the blonde young man beside him. The young man replied, "Even though it was done to rescue illegal slaves, too many mercenaries were injured or killed to be ignored." Abel proposed an idea. "The one who killed all the mercenaries is a stupid chimera that can't distinguish friend from foe." The blonde young man, while jotting down notes, responded, "But Abel, even though we are an organization based in Ibris, we don't have to worry too much." Abel replied, "Anyway, with this incident, the royal family will address the neglect of illegal slave traders and dark wizards in a tune. You don't want people related to this incident to be discriminated against." The blonde young man glanced at the covered body and answered, "He was unbelievably cruel for his age." Abel coldly said, "In this day and age, being raised as a normal child is a great privilege. He possesses all the skills, but ensuring his reputation remains intact is crucial, given the feasibility of him joining our society in the future. After all, he has been very careful in exploiting others." While the two were discussing, others were moving a body covered with cloth to the side, and some were checking the remaining items at the scene. "Clever indeed. The hero about to rise," Abel silently assessed. Meanwhile, Rudd was leisurely leaning back eating an apple, while Renee next to him reading a book. Rudd turned back to say to the person behind, "Hey, I've been here all week. Is your society so poor that it can't even provide basic support services after a few months of existence? That's really shameful." Abel replied to him with a scowling face, "You damn it. Do you have any idea how hard I've worked to clean up your mess?" Rudd replied indifferently, "Anyway, I wasn't the one who killed that pig so violently." Ren cleared her throat with a face full of joy. Rudd helplessly said, "That's nothing to be proud of." Rudd turned back to Abel anyway. "You're taking the rescued elves to Bernica tomorrow, right? I'll also be heading to Farama right after, so don't be sad that we'll be parting soon." Abel said that part is suspicious. Is there perhaps a reason behind sending the elves to Bernica? He appeared skeptical. There are tons of forests where they could live peacefully. Renan answered his question. There's no country where the beliefs and treatment of elves could be as friendly as in Bernica. It's also not a bad time to repay my debt to the Queen of Hearts. Feldra asked the Queen of Hearts, "Are you referring to the great soul who made a pact with the King of Wind Spirits?" "Exactly. We'll have to go to Bernica at some point. So it wouldn't be bad if our names were known there," Rudd replied. Rudd entrusted Renee to Abel. Even though the magic-powered ship takes some time to reach Bernica, it's not bad to treat it as a sightseeing trip, right? Since she has no one else by her side, please take good care of her, Hanyinim. Renee appeared sad, while Abel was shocked by Rudd calling him Hanyinim, a term of endearment for older men. Abel walked away annoyed, muttering kids these days have no respect at all. Meanwhile, Renee hesitantly called out, "Uncle." Rudd responded to her. Renee stuttered, unable to form a sentence, then stood up and ran away. Rudd quietly watched her go. Feldro complained, "He truly is a man without a heart." Rudd calmly replied. What else can I do? We had decided this from the start. He stood up saying, after this, I have to go to Pharma and check the secondary space, as requested by the leader of Haflia, and also need to learn a lot more magic. I have to deal with the Church of the Dragon. I don't have time to take a kid wandering around with me. Feldra asked directly, but you lived comfortably for a week just to leave with the elves. Rudd replied, you're right. He looked outside, feeling puzzled by his own actions. The next day, the ship set off in good weather. Renee and Abel sat opposite each other, full of embarrassment. Abel seemed reluctant in the silence of Renee. It seems you two haven't had your final goodbye. Rudd is really cold. Renee agreed. Yes. Sir? You think so too, right? Abel was stunned when the girl called him sir, while Renee continued to be lost in her thoughts. We spent more than a month together. We learned together and laughed a lot. I want to be strong like him. I want to fight with my own strength and not depend on anyone. If I were stronger, would he have taken me with him? Memories of their journey flashed before Reen's eyes. She felt self-pity and self-blame. Ren called Rudd stupid, terrible, and wicked while Abel, sitting opposite, was petrified. Suddenly, a familiar voice startled her. Seems like your words are quite bitter. Rudd entered with a scowling face. I provided you with food, clothes, and this is what you say about me. Wicked. Both Renee and Abel looked at Rudd with curiosity. Why are you here? After a moment of hesitation, Rudd stiffly answered, I got lost. Renee appeared skeptical. How could you get lost all the way here? Rudd was embarrassed. Then he declared boldly, I intended to give us a cool farewell, but I didn't dare because I'm a coward. How dare you? Amidst Abel's ironic and understanding look and the curious on-look of the elves, Rudd announced to Renee, I will reclaim every penny I've spent on you no matter how many years it takes. You can work or become a great witch. Do anything you want to pay me back. Don't try to run away. If you dare run, I'll chase you to the ends of the continent. He extended his hand and said, if you've got it, then let's go. Renee grumbled, calling Rudd a brute, while Abel sighed in relief. The two of them started their new journey together, truly birds of a feather. In the Kingdom of Magic, at the residence of Pharma Haflia, a red-haired girl was sleeping with her head on the desk. The butler was about to knock on the door, but stopped. The butler respectfully greeted, Are you here, my lady countess? The countess replied, Hanith is still sleeping. Do not wake her up. The person who arrived was Iris Haflia, the owner of the Crimson Tower. She said, surprisingly, that child has submitted a leave of absence, declaring she had completed the entire second-year curriculum over the winter break and then returned. If you spend all your time researching the fever caused by magic without taking a single day off, the butler quickly responded, It's the pure and precious heart of a girl very fond of her sister. Iris sighed helplessly. I wish she would take care of herself. Oh, by the way, what happened with Henneth? The butler answered, It was just a call through the magical communication station. It seems Miss has a visitor looking for her. Meanwhile, Rudd and Renee had disembarked from the ship and were carefree, resting after a long journey. Renee seemed very excited about the scenery in Pharma. Magic towers everywhere, magical tools rarely produced by advanced magic, and especially ice cream. Renee commented, The sweetness truly reflects the strength of human magic, the beauty of the Magic Kingdom. She jumped for joy. Pharma had so many wonders, far different from her village in the forest. Rudd wondered why an elf would like these places since they usually live in their forests. Renee proudly declared, I love magic. One day, I will become a powerful wizard to help you, Uncle Rudd. Rudd coldly splashed her enthusiasm. If I remember correctly, most of the wizards I know have terrible personalities. Don't end up like that. Renee asked, the wizard you mentioned, who is she? Before Rudd could answer, another voice intervened, capturing their attention. Aren't you going to mention me? Heenith approached cheerfully. Rudd, long time no see. Rudd immediately complained, why are you so late? The girl retorted, why do you think I'm late? You're just too early. I haven't heard from you since we took a break. Do you know how shocked I was when you called me this morning? She confusedly asked, who is this girl? Ren curtsied in a noble manner and introduced herself. Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Renee Nastia. I am the secret daughter of Uncle Rudd. I hope you will take care of me, my new mother. Rudd indifferently replied, all wrong. Rudd explained, this kid is just an elf I happened to meet in Atun. Simply put, she's my debtor. Renee, undeterred, continued to beckon new mom, sit here. Meanwhile, Heenith appeared confused. Rudd helplessly asked if they heard what he said. The two of them seemed not to care and were happily chatting away, leaving Rudd with a frustrated face. Heenith warmly told Renee she could call her sister. The girl was delighted. Okay, I have a beautiful and friendly sister now. I also had ice cream for the first time. Today is the best day of my life. Heenith was overwhelmed by the girl's cuteness. She started to nag Rudd. How could you buy ice cream for her on such a cold day? You should have bought her something like hot cocoa. Rudd complained she wanted that. Now that I think about it, she still annoys me. You know her age. A telescope rested on Hineth's smiling face. Iris asked her servant Eben, "That's him, right?" "I think it is." The man calmly explained, "Lady Hineth is grown up. Dating and having a boyfriend is very normal at her age." The Countess coldly replied, "Eben, shut up." The Duchess sadly said, "As a mother, I've thought a lot. I know Hineth's goal is to heal Lila, but I also wish she could fully enjoy her life. She seems to talk a lot about that next hero. But today she even put on makeup, something she's never done. Oh, my child has grown up, so I can't do anything but eliminate him." Eben reminded, "You've gone too far." Suddenly, a shout made the three people sitting pay attention. "Put down that bow. Let me shoot." Even if he is the next hero, he's still just a kid. Hineth shouted in embarrassment. "Mom." The Countess froze while trying to wrestle the bow from her servant. Then, they arrived at the Countess's mansion. All four sat drinking tea in silence. The Countess broke the silence. "So, the next hero." Rudd replied, "My name is Rudd Donatos." Iris said, "Let's get straight to the point, shall we? You're here to check the secondary space barrier at my daughter's request?" She slammed her coffee cup onto the saucer. "How pointless," Iris declared loudly. "The secondary space is still in the final testing phase, so it will be another week. I could have informed you of this over the communicator without you having to call my daughter." The Duchess ordered them to leave with a menacing look, while Hineth stood by confused. Rudd was puzzled as to why Iris was angry while Renai chalantly ate pastries. He suggested learning magic from Iris, the current owner of the Crimson Castle. Iris laughed disdainfully. "You're overconfident because you have a title. A person with only 2 magic circles wants to learn magic from the great sorceress Harpulia." With a flick of her wrist, she created magic around Rudd and arrogantly refused him. Renee exclaimed in surprise, full of amazement. Her comment eased the tension. "You checked his magic circles with just a flick of your wrist and without any spell? Really? That's amazing, Countess Harpulia." Iris blushed, flustered. "It's nothing." Ren asked Iris with a radiant smile, "My magic is self-taught, so it's a bit outdated. Could you possibly teach him and me some magic?" Iris was about to refuse when she caught Renee's pleading, pitiful look. Both mother and daughter couldn't resist such endearment. Iris tried to resist Ren's hopeful look. "If you have nowhere else to go, I might let you borrow a room for a while. But I can't accept a bunch of strangers as my students." Rudd negotiated with Iris that she could set an entrance test for him. Hineth happily asked Renee if she wanted more pastries. Iris laughed heartily. The Duchess said she would ask Rudd a question, and his answer would determine whether he could participate in the entrance test. Hineth seemed puzzled by the question. "What is magic?" Iris asked. After a pause, Rudd gave his answer. "Books define it as a miracle, the manifestation of one's will through the use of magical power. In reality, it's the emulation of a dragon's immense power to hunt a dragon." Hineth was shocked while Iris responded, "That's not a common answer. Those words are not what a proud wizard would say." Then she continued, "But indeed, ancient magic was the absolute advantage of dragons. Today's human magic is like a weak spellbook of dragon magic, only activated by will and spell words. We focus on efficient magic with limited magical power, performed with the help of our limited imagination." But Iris pushed her chair back, moved forward, and created a complex and magnificent magic. The Countess declared boldly, "Human magic will eventually surpass dragon magic. Sometimes, progress starts by facing reality instead of being overconfident without thought. You're still young, but it seems you're not entirely foolish." So with just a wave of her hand, she could perform teleportation magic on that scale. Rudd thought apprehensively. With his expression, Rudd was approved by Iris, and he began the entrance exam. "Let's start the entrance exam," Iris declared. Rudd, puzzled, asked, right now here?" The Countess calmly said, "You're a busy person, right? I don't plan on providing food and shelter to someone who's not my student. Get on with it." Hineth stood up in protest, "Mother. He needs time to prepare." Iris replied with a deathly serious face. "Hineth Harpulia, haven't I told you? The nobility of a noble begins with how they speak." Hineth could only stammer and walk away. Rudd agreed with the Countess and quickly stood up to inquire about the test. The painting of a volcano behind Iris was actually a gateway leading to the Elfale volcano near the east of Pharma. The name means blessing of the Lord, and true to its name, a vast amount of magical power flows along the lie lines of Elfale volcano. It is the foundation of the magical kingdom and a special research area, rich in resources and secrets yet to be revealed. However, where there is abundant magical power, there will be the gathering of countless species. Rudd scratched his head, seemingly confused. Iris explained, "Apart from our research tents, this land is also continuously attacked by dragons, especially the flying kind. You're a student from Aradium. You understand, right? Now that we passed winter, it's the breeding season for flying dragons. While they are not significant alone, they multiply incessantly like flies until their leader dies. You will capture the leader of them hiding somewhere in the Elfale volcano area. Iris set a condition that if Rudd could capture the leader within a week, she would accept him as her student. Rudd responded, "You better not go back on your word." Hinith worriedly called out to him, "Rudd." Iris hugged Renee and chuckled softly, a tower witch never lies. Suddenly, Rudd realized an issue. "Wait, this little girl also wants to become your student. Doesn't she need to take the test as well?" Iris retorted, "You want me to send this adorable child to a boiling volcano? Have you lost your mind?" In fact, Rudd is younger than Renee because she is an elf. Iris caressed Reen's cheek and answered, "I will take good care of the girl. Whether I teach her magic will depend on your success." Rudd protested, "Where's the fairness in that?" Renee also wanted to follow Rudd because she had promised to be loyal to him. Suddenly, Hinith asked Renee, "Do you want some more macarons?" Moments later, Renee, beaming like a flower, stood next to the Countess and her daughter, waving goodbye to Rudd. "Come back safe, Dad," leaving Rudd indignant at her sudden change of heart. "Hey, how dare you leave your dad for a piece of candy?" Iris promptly pushed Rudd into the painting. "You talk too much, next hero." She didn't forget to remind Rudd, who was falling in astonishment, "Remember, you only have 1 week." After a terrible scream, Rudd hit the ground. He let out a pain-filled cry. Rudd was shocked to realize Iris had sent him down here without anything. No food, no water. A macaron fell from the sky as if mocking him. Rudd screamed in anger, "Are you kidding me?" As Rudd wandered among the scorching lava flows, he complained about Iris's unfairness. At least she could have told Rudd where the dragon's lair was, but the Countess chose not to speak and left him to search aimlessly. Feldra commented as the hot rocks changed color, "It's too hot. Let's get this over with quickly." Rudd asked, "Do you get excited when it's cold and restless when it's hot?" Feldro observed the surroundings, contrary to the name Blessing of the Lord. "This is quite a desolate scene." Rudd responded, "A blessing, huh? The magical power here comes from a different source. The fire dragon Amida, the blood flowing from the person who was sealed deep in the volcano." Then he corrected himself, "No, it's the blood of a dragon that's correct." Feldro realized the secondary space wasn't the only reason Rudd came to Pharma. Rudd replied, "That was my intention. I just didn't expect to fall like this." Feldro bluntly pointed out, "You would need 3 years to walk here, so stop complaining." Rudd could only silently sidestep. The fire dragons would appear in the next 3 years. However, this is where they had set up their base, and with the future's fluctuations, we need to do some things to prepare for that. A stone suddenly flew towards him, but Rudd managed to dodge it in time. Rudd realized he might have found the dragon's nest. The nest dragons were just younglings and slow. Rudd could easily dodge their attacks, but their scales were especially hard. Could they be individuals with high resistance? Rudd wondered. He shouted, "Annihilate," then attacked the approaching dragon, and with one blow, he annihilated it. The consequence was Rudd's hand going numb. He felt unconvinced that the terrible Balak could use that move so easily. Feldro commended, "Did you focus your power in the Strero style and make the dragon explode? It seems you can handle these beasts without needing a sword." Rudd massaged his wrist, explaining focusing power into the sword grants strength to the blade, and martial superiority leads to annihilation. It's still a bit incomplete, but... Rudd observed the sky and continued, "This technique has created a significant vibration in the air, so they will flock here soon. Fire dragons move based on vibrations rather than sound." The ferocious flock had sensed the vibration emanating from their nest and began to return. Rudd smiled. Here comes the leader. The leader dragon had fierce yellow eyes and 2 whiskers that seemed to spark flames. It charged towards Rudd and unleashed attacks that pierced through his magical shield. Rudd realized that the dragon could use magic because it was the leader. Rudd recalled Hinith's words, "Are you stupid? You can't fly. So why are you fighting flying dragons? If you can't use magic, you should start with the earth dragons." Rudd scoffed, "Well, now I can fly, but there's no reason to do so." He reached into the space and pulled out a spear. He pointed the spear towards the sky and taunted with a smirk, "Come here, darlings." Numerous magical circles flared at the spear's tip, creating a multitude of powerful tornadoes that rushed towards the dragon flock. Back at the Countess's residence, Hinith and Renee were walking happily together. Hinith apologized to Renee because she was afraid Iris had lost her temper with the girl. Renee cheerfully replied, No, everything's fine. She took me on a tour of the kingdom and organized a party for me. She's very kind." Hinith couldn't help but recall Iris's pretend sternness with Renee. In the Harpulya family, you need to be polite, you need appropriate clothes and a tidy room. For now, let's go explore the kingdom. Hinith wasn't the only one who felt that Iris couldn't resist anything cute. Joy passed, and Renee seemed sad again. Hinith realized the girl wanted to go with Rudd, but Renee, being very understanding, said that her going along would only be a hindrance to Rudd. Suddenly, Renee asked, "Sis, has he always been that strong?" Hinith began to chat with the girl. Rudd has always been a bit unusual. At the enrollment ceremony, He got into a fight with the student council secretary. She caught the attention of 4 teachers and even had his wrist broken by a girl. Renee was astonished that someone could break Rudd's wrist. Hinith began to tell, "It's a long story. That girl's name is Leon. She was in our class." During a peaceful sunset in Pharma, Renee and Hinith chatted for a long time. After hearing the whole story, Renee, brimming with anger, said, "How could someone be so cruel? Next time I see him, I'm going to scold him." Hinith stood beside, cunningly smiling like a fox. Through their casual conversation, Hinith actually wanted to comfort Renee not to worry too much. He's strong enough to defeat 1,000 different types of dragons. He won't admit it, but everyone can see he's a warrior, right? Back on the battlefield where Rudd was fighting with a flock of dragons, Feldro looked at the strange spear in his hand and asked, "Is this a new weapon?" Rudd replied, "The storm spear is an ancient weapon that brings the power of the storm." Rudd wished his past self could also use it, but ancient weapons usually consume a tremendous amount of magical power. This spear even more so. It uses so much magical power that sometimes Rudd can't even use it when he needs to. Rudd proudly boasted to Feldro, "Cool, isn't it?" The crystal seemed at a loss for words. "You're using a weapon like this to fight flying dragons." In Feldro's eyes, Rudd's mental age didn't seem to match his biological age. Rudd countered, "Hey, no matter how old someone is, how much depth they have, they can still be a child. If you have a super cool weapon, you should use it even if the opponent is just a mosquito." Just as he finished speaking, Rudd fell backward. He couldn't even hold the spear anymore. Feldro worriedly asked Rudd, "What's wrong?" Rudd sheepishly replied, "I've run out of magical power." By nightfall, Rudd was grilling dragon meat while chatting with Feldro. Feldro kept complaining, "You impulsively used an ancient weapon just because it's cool. Look at how you're wolfing down that stinky dragon meat. Clearly your intelligence has drained away, along with your magical power." Rudd finished his meat and tossed the bone aside. "Be quiet. I think I have enough strength to keep walking now." Rudd started pondering why he couldn't break through the barrier to become a 5-circle wizard. It had been a long time since he became a 4-circle wizard, and he wasn't lacking in ability. Rudd needed some time to recover his magical power. He realized he had practiced enough externally, so he began searching internally for the key to break through the barrier of 4 magical circles. Flecks of blue light emanated, coalescing into streams of light that swirled around Rudd. The next time Rudd opened his eyes, he was in a different space. Rudd murmured softly, "So it's been nearly a year. It's not hard to maintain the mindset I once had. Weapons and attire have appeared. Does the condition of oneself affect one's mental state? I wonder." Rudd planned to store his attire and weapon in the subspace. The quiet space had only Rudd walking on a surface resembling water, creating ripples. Rudd called out, "Feldro, in your past life, you had made a pact with Vinar. You must have been to this blue paradise before, right?" But Feldro did not respond to Rudd. Rudd realized the connection had been cut off. Rudd thought that if this space allowed a soul to enter, it could also detect the spirit form of its owner. Suddenly, a giant door appeared in front of Rudd. He was astonished, not knowing why there was a door here and where it would lead. He decided to push the door open and move forward. But as soon as he stepped through the door, Rudd fell straight down into an undefined space. He landed painfully. Rudd couldn't help but swear. Suddenly, he realized the sword hanging by his side had disappeared. One misfortune after another made Rudd furious. Rudd discovered that below the cliff was a vast library. Rudd's attention was drawn to a book titled Rudd Donato's Memories at Age 6. Curious about the book bearing his name, Rudd opened it. Numerous memory tapes poured out from the book. Rudd realized it was some kind of magic. Countless images flooded into his head. Without a doubt, these were the past life memories of Rudd. Rudd didn't understand why these memories were in the blue heaven. Rudd wondered if this was the place where his soul was reflected in the celestial garden. However, this place wasn't just recording the memories of Rudd alone. He put the book down and began to look around. In front of stacks of towering books, Rudd noticed a book with an unusual color. The book was titled Memories at Age 24 of Leon Kreyer. Rudd, startled, rushed over and flung the book open. Numerous memory tapes spilled out, making him turn pale. The frame replayed memories of Leon. In the memories, Leon seemed to struggle to stay conscious. She thought, "I can't hear anything. It hurts. I'm so tired." In front of her was a figure. It was Rudd. The girl thought, "Why is he screaming like that?" The girl gradually closed her eyes in Rudd's look of despair. In her last moments of consciousness, Leon thought, "He's still the same till the end." "Rudd, you truly are a damn fool." Rudd threw the book to the ground, cutting off the stream of memories. He was panting with a terrifying look on his face. "What the hell is this?" Rudd clenched his fist in anger. "I don't understand. Why are the memories of my classmates from the past here?" Besides Leon's memories, there were also memories at age 20 of Hinith Harpelia, memories at age 26 of Balak Steros, memories at age 23 of Lenia Selkit.